The screen went white, then black, then flickered back to the login page. Mira Chen stared at it, her finger hovering over the trackpad, frozen in the familiar paralysis that had been claiming more and more of her workdays. She'd been writing the same function for 3 hours, deleting and rewriting it, watching the cursor blink on line 47 until the characters blurred into meaningless squiggles. Mira! Jordan's voice cut through her haze, tinged with the artificial brightness he reserved for their weekly check-ins. You with us? She glanced up from her MacBook to see him standing by her desk, holding 2 coffees. The Innovatech office buzzed with the controlled chaos of midday, mechanical keyboards clattering, standing desks whirring up and down, the constant murmur of engineers discussing algorithms and deployment strategies. Yeah, sorry. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog from her mind. Just debugging. Jordan set 1 coffee down on her desk, black, 2 sugars, exactly how she liked it. He'd been her team lead for 8 months now, and somewhere along the way, he'd memorized these small details about everyone on his team. It was the kind of gesture that should have made her feel cared for, but instead made her stomach tighten with guilt. I pulled your commit history, he said gently, perching on the edge of her desk. You've been pushing code at 3 a.m. lately. Everything okay? No. Yes, she said. Just getting in the zone, you know how it is. Behind her, she heard Sam's mechanical keyboard pause, then resume with increased intensity. Sam never took breaks, never left before midnight, never seemed to struggle with the weight of their deadlines the way Mira did. Sometimes she wondered if Sam had discovered some productivity hack the rest of them were missing, or if Sam was just better at hiding their own battles. Actually, Jordan continued, I wanted to talk to you about the Thompson account. The client's pushing for those API integrations by Friday and... The words dissolved into static as Myra's vision swam. She gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles whitening. Her heart stuttered, then raced. Not here. Not now. I need a minute, she mumbled, already standing. She didn't wait for Jordan's response before hurrying to the bathroom, her sneakers silent on the polished concrete floor. In the pristine white bathroom, all glass doors and automatic sensors, Mira locked herself in the last stall and leaned against the door. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. The fluorescent lights felt too bright, the walls too close. She fumbled in her pocket for the prescription bottle she'd been carrying for the past 3 weeks. Xanax. 0.5 milligrams, take as needed for anxiety. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd started taking these to manage the anxiety of her workload, but now the anxiety of needing them at work was worse than the anxiety they were meant to treat. She dry swallowed half a pill, then sat on the closed toilet lid, head in her hands, waiting for the familiar numbness to settle over her like a weighted blanket. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her younger brother, Leo. Hey sis. Mom's birthday dinner Tuesday. Don't flake this time. Mira typed back, I'll be there. She wouldn't be. She knew it even as she sent the message. The last family gathering she'd missed, her mother had assumed it was work. My daughter, the engineer, she'd told everyone proudly, according to Leo. Working so hard at that fancy tech company. If only her mother knew. If only anyone knew. The bathroom door opened, heels clicking on tile. Mira quickly flushed the toilet and emerged from the stall, running her hands under the automatic faucet. In the mirror, her reflection looked alien, dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide, cheekbones more prominent than they should be. When had she started looking so hollow? Back at her desk, the half-written function waited like an accusation. Jordan had left a note on a post-it. Take your time. I'm here if you need anything. She crumpled the note and dropped it in her trash can, already filling with energy drink cans and crumpled receipts from the pharmacy. Then she opened a new terminal window and started coding because if she stopped, if she let herself think, the hole in her chest might swallow her entirely. By 6 p.m., most of the open office had emptied out. The foosball table in the break room sat abandoned, the catered dinner, Indian food tonight, was picked clean. Only Sam remained at their desk, the glow of dual monitors illuminating their face in the dimming light. "Want to grab a drink?" Sam asked without looking up from their screen. There's that new place on 3rd Street. Can't, Mira said automatically. Then, softening her tone, rain check? Sam nodded, already back to coding. They understood, or at least pretended to. In the tech world, work always came first. Deadlines were sacred. Socializing was optional, especially for people like Mira and Sam, the diverse hires who felt the constant pressure to prove they belonged. Mira packed up her laptop, checking her email one last time. No emergencies, no urgent messages from Jordan. She could go home. She could eat something, try to sleep, start fresh tomorrow. Instead, she opened her browser and navigated to her usual pharmacy's website. They offered same-day delivery until 8 p.m. At home, a studio apartment in Silicon Valley that cost more than her parents' mortgage in Ohio, Mira ordered Thai food and waited for both deliveries. The prescription came first, another bottle of Xanax because her current supply was running low. The pharmacy tech had raised an eyebrow when she'd called in the refill. "Aren't you filling this a little early?" he'd asked. "My doctor said I could increase the dosage," she'd lied smoothly. "For severe anxiety." The food arrived 20 minutes later. Mira paid the delivery driver, set the bag on her kitchen counter, and took another half Xanax with a gulp of tap water. Then she opened her laptop and logged into the work VPN. By the time she finally crawled into bed, it was 3:47 a.m. Her commit history would show another night of productive coding. Jordan would praise her dedication. Her mother would be proud. And tomorrow she would do it all again. Call came at 4:32 a.m. on a Tuesday, jolting Mira from a Xanax-induced sleep. She groped for her phone on the nightstand, knocking over an empty pill bottle in the process. "Hello?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse. She hadn't spoken to anyone in person since Monday morning. "Mira?" "It's Aunt June." The formal tone, the early hour, dread pooled in her stomach before her aunt spoke again. "It's your father, honey. He had a stroke. They don't think he's going to make it." The words hit her in waves, each one requiring processing before the next could land. Father. Stroke. Not going to make it. "I need to, I'll be there. I'll book a flight." "How's Mom?" "Your mother's holding up. She said not to bother coming if you're busy with work." Passive aggression was vintage Grace Chen. Even in crisis, the family dynamics remained predictably dysfunctional. "I'll be there," Mira repeated, already reaching for her laptop to book a flight to Columbus. She found a red-eye leaving at midnight, arriving at 7 a.m. local time. 17 hours. She tried calling her mother, but the phone went straight to voicemail. Leo answered on the third ring. "Finally," he said. "I've been texting all night." "I'm sorry. I was sleeping. Tell me everything you know." As Leo recounted the details, their father had collapsed in the garage while working on his beloved 1967 Mustang. The paramedics had found him 20 minutes later. Mira pulled pill bottles from her medicine cabinet. Xanax, Adderall, Ambien. She'd need to be careful about dosing during the trip. Airport security, rental cars, her family's watchful eyes. "Are you even listening?" Leo asked. "Yes." "Garage. Mustang. I get it. You sound weird." "I just woke up, Leo." She cradled the phone against her shoulder while organizing pills into a travel case. "I'll see you tomorrow." After the call, she emailed Jordan. "Family emergency. Father in critical condition. Flying to Ohio tonight. Will work remotely as possible." Jordan responded within 15 minutes. "I'm so sorry, Mira." "Take all the time you need. Family comes first." She spent the rest of the day in a strange state of suspended animation. She packed methodically, 3 days' worth of clothes, laptop charger, medication. She bought travel-sized toiletries. She arranged for her mail to be held. She did everything a competent adult would do while fighting the urge to double her Xanax dosage and disappear into chemical oblivion. At Innovatech, she wrapped up her current projects. Thompson integration could wait. Someone else could take the initiative. For once, she was grateful for her tendency to over-document her code. The hardest part was saying goodbye to Sam. "Hey," she said, approaching their desk around 4 p.m. "I need to head to Ohio. Family thing." Sam's fingers stilled on their keyboard. They turned in their ergonomic chair, really looking at her for the first time in weeks. "Is everything okay?" "My dad, he had a stroke." "Shit." Sam ran a hand through their purple-streaked hair. "I'm sorry. Do you need anything? Just, can you water my plants?" "The apartment keys in my desk drawer." They exchanged keys, Myra's apartment, Sam's house. A gesture of trust that felt significant, though neither acknowledged it. "Take care of yourself," Sam said. "You too." The airport, Mira took a Xanax before going through security. She'd calculated the timing carefully, enough to calm her nerves without making her visibly impaired. She passed through the scanners without incident, her pills safely packed in her checked luggage. On the plane, wedged between a businessman and a family with a crying baby, Mira tried to work. She opened her laptop, connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi, and stared at her code. Cursor blinked mockingly. Nothing made sense. Her usual ability to disappear into algorithms and data structures had abandoned her. She closed the laptop and took another half Xanax. Then she put in her noise-canceling headphones and tried to sleep. She woke to the pilot's announcement about landing. Dawn painted the sky outside her window in shades of orange and pink. Below, Ohio spread out in a patchwork of fields and suburbs. It looked exactly as she remembered, flat, ordered, predictable. Everything her life wasn't. Baggage claim, she spotted Leo immediately. He was taller than she remembered. His dark hair cropped short in a way that made him look older than his 23 years. He was scanning the crowd, and when he saw her, his face crumpled with relief. "Thank God you're here," he said, pulling her into a hug. He smelled like college, Axe body spray and instant ramen. "Mom's been asking about you." In the rental car, a practical sedan that reminded her of their childhood minivan, Leo filled her in on their father's condition. No improvement. The doctors were talking about quality of life, about difficult decisions. "He's on a ventilator," Leo said, merging onto the highway. "They say if we take him off." "I get it." Mira stared out the window at the familiar landmarks of her youth. The exit for her high school. The billboard for the furniture store where her first boyfriend had worked summers. Everything looked smaller, faded, like a photocopy of a photocopy. "Mom keeps asking when you'll visit more," Leo continued. "She doesn't understand why you moved so far away." "'Cause I can't be myself here," Mira thought but didn't say. "'Cause every family dinner feels like an interrogation. 'Cause I can barely function in California, let alone in the suffocating embrace of my childhood home." "Work's been crazy," was all she said. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and floor wax. Their father lay in ICU, a network of tubes and monitors transforming him into something barely recognizable. Myra's mother sat beside the bed, holding his hand. When she looked up at Myra's entrance, her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "You came," Grace-chan said, as if surprised. "Of course I came, Mom. I told June not to bother you. I know how important your work is." The words were loaded with history, with every missed birthday and holiday, every phone call cut short by a deployment crisis or a debugging session that couldn't wait. "Dad's important too," Mira said, approaching the bed. Close, her father looked smaller than life. His face was slack, eyes closed. The ventilator whooshed rhythmically, artificially sustaining the man who had taught her to code when she was 12 on an old desktop computer in the garage. He'd been a mechanical engineer working for the same company for 30 years. Steady. Reliable. Everything she wasn't. "The doctors say we need to decide soon," her mother said. "About life support." Mira felt her pharmaceutical fortitude wavering. She excused herself to the bathroom, where she took a full Xanax and splashed water on her face. In the mirror, she looked like a ghost of herself, pale, hollow-eyed, disconnected from reality. When she returned, a doctor was explaining the situation to her mother. Words like minimal brain activity and quality of life floated past her, abstract concepts that couldn't possibly apply to her father. This was the man who had fixed every broken toy, every crashed computer, every problem in her childhood with patience and steady hands. "I need to work," she said suddenly. "I have projects that can't wait." Her mother looked at her, disappointment flickering across her face before being replaced by resignation. "Of course, dear. We understand." But they didn't understand. None of them understood the panic that rose in her throat at the thought of being away from her laptop, her pills, her carefully controlled environment. The only thing keeping her tethered to sanity was the routine of code and chemicals. That night, in her childhood bedroom, Mira set up her laptop on the desk where she'd once done calculus homework. She connected to the hospital's guest Wi-Fi and worked until her eyes burned. She pushed code, responded to emails, maintained the illusion of productivity while her father lay dying across town. 2 a.m., she took an Ambien and tried to sleep. But in the darkness, memories surfaced like ghosts. Her father teaching her to change a tire, cheering at her high school graduation, looking proud but confused when she'd announced her job offer in California. "That's so far away," he'd said. "It's where the opportunities are, Dad." Opportunities for what? She'd never been able to answer that question satisfactorily. Opportunities to escape, to reinvent herself, to build a life free from the expectations and judgments of a small Ohio town. Instead, she'd built a life of isolation and addiction, replacing one set of cages for another. The phone rang at 5:17 a.m. She answered before it could wake the whole house. "He's gone," Leo said. "It happened about 20 minutes ago. Mom needs you." Mira dressed in the dark and drove to the hospital. The Xanax she'd taken kept her hands steady on the wheel, kept the reality of loss at arm's length. In the ICU, her father's body looked the same, but something essential had departed. Her mother sat motionless, still holding his hand. "Mom," Mira whispered, touching her shoulder. Grace Chen turned to her daughter, and for the first time in years, Mira saw her as vulnerable, breakable. They embraced, her mother's body shaking with silent sobs. "I'm sorry," Mira said, meaning so many things. Sorry for not visiting more, sorry for the emotional distance, sorry for being the daughter who could fix code but not the broken connection between them. Over the next 3 days, amidst the blur of funeral arrangements and family obligations, Mira maintained her pharmaceutical routine. She worked between prayers at the funeral home. She answered emails during the reception at their house. She kept the mechanisms of her Silicon Valley life humming while her childhood self was laid to rest alongside her father. On the last night before her return flight, Leo found her in the garage, standing beside their father's Mustang. "You were his favorite, you know," Leo said, leaning against the workbench. "He never said it, but we all knew. I wasn't here when he needed me." "You're never here." The accusation hung in the air between them. Mira wanted to explain, to tell him about the pressure cooker of her job, the anxiety that made her chest feel like it was caving in, the pills that had become as essential as breathing. Instead, she looked at her hands, surprised to find them oil-stained from touching the car. "I don't know how to be here," she admitted. "That's the problem, isn't it?" Leo pushed off the workbench. "You don't know how to be anywhere anymore." After he left, Mira sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang, running her hand over the steering wheel her father had gripped countless times. She found a bottle of his cologne in the glove compartment, Old Spice, the same scent that had defined her childhood. She sprayed a little on her wrist, and for a moment she could almost feel him there, guiding her hands on the wheel, teaching her to parallel park, telling her she was capable of anything. She laughed then, a sound that twisted into something like sobbing. Here she was, capable of debugging complex systems and building scalable web applications, but incapable of managing her own mind without pharmaceutical intervention. Capable of everything except being the daughter her parents had wanted, the sister her brother deserved, the person she'd thought she'd become. The next morning, she boarded her flight back to California with one additional item in her luggage, the cologne bottle wrapped carefully in bubble wrap. It was the only thing she'd taken from her father's belongings, the only physical reminder of a life that had shaped her but couldn't contain her. The airport in San Francisco, Sam was waiting at arrivals. They held a sign that read "World's Okayest Engineer" with a sad face emoji drawn underneath. "You didn't have to come," Mira said, but she was grateful. "Yes, I did. Come on, let's get you home." In Sam's car, driving through late afternoon traffic, Mira leaned her head against the window and tried to process her return to reality. The fog was rolling in from the bay, turning the city into a watercolor painting. She could already feel the pull of her apartment, her laptop, her pills. "My dad, he was a good man," she said finally. "I bet," Sam replied. "You turned out okay, so he must have done something right." The kindness in those words nearly broke her. She pressed her fingertips against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of someone who only knew the professional version of herself. They drove in comfortable silence until Sam pulled up to her building. As Mira gathered her bags, Sam turned in the driver's seat to face her. "Listen, Mira. I know we don't really talk about personal stuff, but if you need anything, someone to listen, someone to help debug life, I'm here." For a moment, Mira considered telling the truth. About the pills. About the crushing anxiety. About the way she felt like she was always teetering on the edge of a breakdown. Instead, she nodded and got out of the car. In her apartment, she unpacked methodically. Clothes in the hamper. Laptop on the charging dock. Pills arranged in their proper bottles. Cologne went on her bathroom counter, a small shrine to a man who had understood her once, before she'd become someone even she didn't recognize. She opened her laptop and found 17 unread messages from Jordan. Apparently, the Thompson integration had hit a snag. There was a new bug in production. The junior developers needed direction. Mira took 2 Xanax, made coffee, and began typing. Within an hour, she was deep in the flow of code, her father's death pushed into a mental compartment labeled "Deal with Later." Cursor blinked on line 47, exactly where she'd left it before her world had tilted off its axis. At midnight, she submitted a pull request that would fix the integration issues. 2 a.m., she took an Ambien and tried to sleep. 4 a.m., she gave up and started coding again, her father's cologne wafting faintly from the bathroom, a reminder of all the things she couldn't fix with logic and semicolons. 2 weeks after the funeral, Myra's life had settled back into its chemically maintained equilibrium. She popped Adderall to focus during the day, Xanax to calm the edges of her anxiety, and Ambien to shut down her mind at night. Jordan had stopped mentioning her late-night commits, accepting them as part of her new normal. Even Sam seemed to sense she needed space, their interactions limited to work-focused Slack messages and the occasional debugging session. It was a Tuesday when everything started to unravel. The morning had begun predictably, 2 Adderall tablets crushed into her coffee, a protein bar she wouldn't finish, her laptop open before 7 a.m. She was 3 hours into fixing a race condition in the payment processing system when her vision started to blur. She blinked hard, rubbed her eyes, but the text on her screen remained stubbornly out of focus. "Shit," she muttered, checking the time. Only 10:17 a.m., too early for the Adderall to be wearing off. She stood up too quickly, gripping her desk as dizziness washed over her. In the break room, she poured more coffee, adding extra sugar. Caffeine would help. It always helped. Back at her desk, she tried to read through her code review comments. Sam had left detailed notes on her pull request, but the words swam together like soup. She squinted, leaned closer to the screen, and felt sweat break out on her forehead. "Mira." Someone touched her shoulder. "You okay?" She looked up to find Priya from HR standing by her desk, concern evident on her face. "Fine," Mira managed. "Just allergies." "You're really pale." "Maybe you should." The room tilted sideways. Mira was vaguely aware of Priya shouting her name, of other people gathering around her desk. Then everything went dark. She came to in the break room, lying on the couch with someone's jacket under her head. A crowd had gathered. Jordan, Sam, Priya, and several other colleagues formed a semicircle around her. Embarrassment flooded through her, hot and nauseating. "I'm fine," she said, trying to sit up. "Really? I just haven't eaten much today." "The paramedics are on their way," Priya said. "This is procedure for any medical incident at work." "Paramedics?" Panic spiked through her. "No, that's not necessary. I just need—" "Your heart rate was really irregular," Sam interrupted. "I timed it while you were out. And you weren't breathing normally." "My pills," she thought frantically. "The Adderall. The Xanax. Would they test her blood? Would they find traces of everything she'd taken?" "Please," she said to Priya. "I really don't need an ambulance. I'll go to urgent care on my own." Priya exchanged glances with Jordan. "We can't force you, but we strongly recommend—" "I'm going to urgent care," Mira insisted, swinging her legs off the couch. The movement made her head spin, but she fought through it. "Sam, can you drive me? Please." 20 minutes later, Mira was in Sam's car, heading to a nearby urgent care clinic. Her hand shook as she gripped her purse, acutely aware of the pill bottles inside. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" Sam asked, not unkindly. "I told you. I haven't been eating properly. And I've been stressed about work and everything with my dad." "Right." Sam's voice was carefully neutral. "And that explains why you're always wired on 1,000 milligrams of caffeine but somehow exhausted at the same time." Mira stared out the window, watching the tech campuses and office parks blur past. "I'm managing. I'm getting my work done." "That's not what I asked." At the urgent care clinic, Mira checked in while Sam found seats in the waiting room. The receptionist handed her a clipboard with forms that asked about current medications, medical conditions, alcohol, and drug use. Myra's pen hovered over the form. She could lie, she'd done it before. But what if they ran tests? What if this episode was related to her medication? She marked yes for current medications and listed only Xanax, prescribed for anxiety. Everything else she omitted. The wait seemed endless. Sam sat beside her, occasionally glancing up from their phone to check on her. Other patients came and went, a teenager with a broken wrist, an elderly man with a persistent cough, a woman holding a feverish toddler. Normal people with normal problems, not like Mira, who was slowly dissolving under the weight of her own medication regimen. "Mira Chen." A nurse called from the doorway. In the examination room, the nurse took her vitals while asking standard questions. Blood pressure 142/90. Heart rate 98 irregular. Temperature normal. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, entered a few minutes later. "I understand you fainted at work?" Dr. Martinez asked, reviewing the nurse's notes. "Yes. I've been under a lot of stress lately. My father passed away a few weeks ago and work has been intense." Dr. Martinez nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry for your loss. Tell me about your medications." Mira repeated the partial truth about Xanax for anxiety. "Dosage: 0.5 milligrams as needed." "How often do you find yourself needing it?" Mira hesitated. "A few times a week." The doctor made a note. "Any other medications? Supplements? Over-the-counter drugs?" "Just caffeine. Coffee, energy drinks." "How much caffeine would you say you consume daily?" "I'm not sure. Maybe 6 cups of coffee." Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Combined with Xanax, that could certainly explain some heart irregularities. "Are you sleeping well?" "Not really." This at least was honest. "I've been having trouble since my father died." "Have you considered grief counseling?" "Sometimes after a loss. people self-medicate in ways that can be harmful. The irony was almost laughable. Mira nodded, playing the role of the bereaved daughter seeking help. I'd like to run some tests, Dr. Martinez continued. Blood work, EKG, to rule out any underlying conditions. We should also discuss your anxiety management. Xanax is meant for short-term use, and if you're experiencing grief-related symptoms... I have a psychiatrist, Mira lied smoothly. I'm scheduled to see her next week. Excellent. In the meantime, I'd recommend cutting back on caffeine significantly. Your heart needs rest to heal. She paused, studying Myra's face. When did you last eat a full meal? Yesterday, Mira said automatically. What did you have? Question stumped her. She tried to remember, but the past few days blurred together in a haze of code and pills and grief. Probably lunch with my team? Probably isn't good enough. Dr. Martinez closed the laptop. Your body is telling you something. Grief, stress, poor nutrition, excessive stimulants, something has to give. I'm going to draw some blood, run an EKG, and I want you to follow up with your primary care physician within the week. After the tests, which all came back showing mild irregularities but nothing immediately dangerous, Mira and Sam left the clinic with a prescription for a beta blocker and strict instructions about caffeine reduction. Want to grab lunch? Sam asked as they reached the car. Actual food? I should get back to work. The Thompson integration. The Thompson integration can wait. You literally passed out at your desk. They ended up at a small Vietnamese restaurant near the office. Mira ordered pho, more to appease Sam than because she was hungry. The rich broth and tender noodles did smell appealing, though, triggering a reminder of how long it had been since she'd eaten something substantial. So, Sam said once they'd started eating, want to tell me why you're really taking Xanax multiple times a day instead of a few times a week? Myra's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. I don't. I found one of your empty bottles in the office recycling last week. 60 tablets prescribed 6 weeks ago. If you were taking them as needed, you'd still have most of them. Heat crept up Myra's neck. Have you been spying on me? No. I was throwing away my energy drink can and noticed it. Look, I've been in AA for 3 years. I know what self-medication looks like. Confession hung between them. Mira set down her spoon, her appetite vanishing. 3 years, she repeated. 3 years, 2 months, 17 days. Sam's smile was wry. I could tell you the hours if you wanted. After I got my DUI, I had a choice, prison or rehab. Turns out, facing your demons is less scary than jail. I don't have a problem, Mira said automatically. Neither did I. Sam shrugged. I just happened to black out drunk before noon on workdays. No big deal. This is different. How? I'm functional. I get my work done. I meet deadlines. And you fainted at your desk because you're so functional? Mira pushed rice noodles around in her bowl, not answering. Here's what I see, Sam continued gently. I see someone incredibly talented who's terrified of making a mistake. Someone who works herself to death because slowing down means actually feeling things. Someone who takes pills to stay awake, pills to fall asleep, and pills to handle everything in between. You don't know what it's like, Mira said, her voice thick with emotion. The pressure, the expectations. Everyone thinking you're this diversity hire who only got the job because you check boxes. Having to prove yourself every single day. You're right. I don't know exactly what it's like for you. Sam's expression was serious. But I know what it's like to use substances to cope with pressure you think is unique to you. Spoiler alert, every addict thinks their pain is special. I'm not an addict. Okay. Sam held up their hands. You're right. You're not. And I'm not suggesting you are. I'm suggesting that maybe you're using medication in ways that could become problematic if you're not careful. They ate in silence for a while, the sounds of the restaurant, clinking dishes, muffled conversations, filling the space between them. "My father used to tell me I could do anything," Mira said finally. "He was so proud when I got the Innovatech job. I kept telling everyone about his daughter, the engineer in Silicon Valley. But I feel like a fraud. Every day. Like everyone's going to figure out I don't belong here, that I'm not as smart as they think I am. Imposter syndrome is real. And it's worse for people like us, women, people of color, anyone who doesn't fit the tech bro stereotype. How do you handle it? Therapy. Meetings. Actually talking to people instead of isolating in my apartment with my laptop and whatever substances promised to make me feel better." Sam studied her. "When was the last time you did something just for fun? Not work-related, not skill-building, just fun." Mira couldn't remember. Even her free time was structured around productivity, reading tech blogs, working on side projects, maintaining the facade of the perfect tech employee. "That long, huh?" Sam signaled for the check. "I have a proposal. This weekend you're coming to the beach with me and my friends. No work allowed. No phones allowed except for emergencies. Just existing." "I can't. I have the Thompson. The Thompson integration will survive 48 hours without you. Trust me." Back at the office, Mira tried to focus on her code, but Dr. Martinez's warnings echoed in her mind. Something has to give. She opened her medication app, reviewing her dosing history for the first time in months. The numbers were staggering. She'd been taking 3 times the prescribed amount of Xanax, combining it with Adderall and extreme caffeine consumption, then using Ambien to crash at night. No wonder she'd fainted. She opened a new document and began typing a list. Current medications. Xanax, prescribed 0.5 milligrams as needed, actually taking 1.5 to 2 milligrams daily. Adderall, not prescribed 20 to 30 milligrams daily. Caffeine, 6 to 10 cups coffee, 2 to 3 energy drinks. Ambien, prescribed 10 milligrams nightly, actually taking 15 to 20 milligrams. Symptoms. Irregular heartbeat. Vision problems. Dizziness/fainting. Insomnia despite medication. No appetite. Constant anxiety. Consequences. Performance at work declining despite more hours. Social isolation. Health issues. Lying to doctors, family, colleagues. Mira saved the document in a password-protected folder, as if admitting these truths on paper made them more real, more dangerous. She glanced at the clock, 5:47 p.m. In her previous life, before the pills, before the pressure, before her father's death had cracked open something inside her, she would have left work by now, maybe met friends for dinner, called her family. Instead, she opened another energy drink and dove back into her code. Cursor blinked. Line 47. The function that had been giving her trouble for weeks seemed to mock her, a digital manifestation of everything wrong in her life. Complex, buggy, impossible to fix with quick hacks. Around 8 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "Mom says you're not returning her calls. Everything okay?" She typed back, "Fine. Busy with work. We'll call this weekend." Another lie. Another promise she probably wouldn't keep. By midnight, the office was empty except for the janitorial staff and Mira. She'd rewritten the functions 6 times, each iteration worse than the last. Her hands shook slightly, the first signs of withdrawal as the Adderall wore off and she resisted the urge to take more. She tried calling her psychiatrist's office to arrange a refill of her Ambien. Her current supply was running dangerously low, but got the after-hours voicemail. Panic fluttered in her chest. Without Ambien, how would she sleep? Without sleep, how would she function tomorrow? She Googled how to sleep without medication, but the search results seemed designed for normal people who had normal insomnia, not for someone whose brain had been chemically rewired by months of drug dependence. 2 a.m. she gave up on work and drove home. In her apartment, she tried to eat microwaved dinner that had been sitting in her freezer since her father's funeral, but managed only a few bites before nausea forced her to stop. She took 1.5 Ambien, knowing it might not be enough but terrified of taking more after today's fainting episode. As she waited for the medication to work, she found herself on her father's Facebook page, scrolling through his posts. The last one was from 6 weeks ago, a photo of the Mustang newly polished with the caption, "Another Saturday with my best girl." #restoration, #family, #legacy. Her throat tightened. She clicked to the comments, reading through the reactions from his coworkers, neighbors, distant relatives. Then she saw it, a comment from her own account. "Looking good, Dad. Next time I visit, you can teach me to change the oil." She'd written it automatically, the kind of casual engagement that took 5 seconds and meant nothing. Now it felt like everything. She clicked through to her own page, a barren landscape of work-related shares and auto-posted content from fitness apps she'd long since stopped using. When had she become this person? When had her life contracted to such a narrow band of existence? The Ambien finally kicked in, pulling her under into a restless sleep punctuated by dreams of code errors and her father's disappointed face. She woke at 4:30 a.m., groggy but unable to fall back asleep. By 5 a.m., she was at her kitchen table with her laptop and coffee, checking emails before the workday officially began. There was one from HR. Priya wanted to schedule a mandatory wellness check-in following yesterday's incident. Great, Mira thought. Just what I need. She drafted a response, requesting a meeting for later that day, then opened her code editor. Problematic function was still there, still broken, still mocking her. She stared at it until the letters blurred together. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost ignored it, then a thought struck her. What if something was wrong with her mother? "Hello? Is this Mira Chen?" The voice was official, formal. "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Dr. Sarah Kim from Oakland Medical Center. I have your test results from yesterday's urgent care visit." Myra's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come in today?" I have work. Can't you just tell me over the phone?" "I strongly recommend an in-person consultation. Our earliest availability is 11 a.m. "Fine. I'll be there." She hung up, her heart racing. The medical cannabis she'd tried last semester had shown up in drug screenings 3 weeks later. What if they'd found traces of the unprescribed Adderall? What if they'd discovered she was lying about her medication dosages? At 11 a.m., she sat in Dr. Kim's office, hands clenched in her lap. The doctor was young, maybe early 30s, with the carefully composed expression of someone delivering difficult news. "Your blood work shows concerning levels of amphetamines and benzodiazepines," Dr. Kim said without preamble. "The combination, along with the excessive caffeine, put significant strain on your heart. I have prescriptions. For the Xanax and Ambien, yes. But not for the Adderall. And even with prescriptions, your levels suggest you're taking far more than prescribed." Mira said nothing. What was there to say? "I've seen this before," Dr. Kim continued. "High-achieving professionals who start using medications to enhance performance, then can't stop. The tech industry is particularly vulnerable to this pattern." "I can stop any time," Mira said automatically. "Then stop. Right now. I'll schedule you for a follow-up in 2 weeks. If your levels haven't decreased significantly, I'll need to share these results with your primary care physician and recommend immediate intervention." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm trying to help you. Your heart showed irregularities yesterday. If you continue this pattern, you risk serious cardiac events. At your age, that could mean anything from arrhythmia to cardiac arrest." The words echoed in Myra's ears as she left the medical center. Cardiac arrest. Her father had passed from a stroke, his heart giving out under the pressure of undiagnosed hypertension and stress. Was she following the same path? Back at Innovatech, she went through the motions of the day. The meeting with Priya was brief, standard check-in about stress management and work-life balance. Mira provided the expected answers. Yes, she was eating better. Yes, she was getting help for her grief. Yes, she appreciated the company's concern. But as the afternoon wore on, her anxiety intensified. The usual Xanax dose didn't touch the edge. She kept checking her phone for an email from Dr. Kim, expecting a follow-up threat or demand. 6 p.m. As the office emptied, Sam appeared at her desk. "Beach weekend," they announced. "Yes or no?" "I can't." "The Thompson." "I already talked to Jordan." "You're off the hook for this weekend. The integration is being pushed to next sprint anyway." Mira felt trapped. The walls of her carefully controlled world were closing in, doctors, colleagues, even her family, all pressing for something she wasn't sure she could give. "I have to work this weekend," she insisted. "No, you don't. You have to choose whether you trust me enough to try something different." Later that night, alone in her apartment with her laptop and her pills, Mira made a choice. She poured the remaining Adderall down the toilet, promising herself she would quit everything. Cold turkey. She was strong enough. She just needed a few days to show everyone, to show herself that she was in control. By 3 a.m., she was drenched in sweat, her heart hammering, hands shaking uncontrollably. Withdrawal. Of course there would be withdrawal. But she could handle it. She had to. She lasted until 6 a.m. before taking a Xanax just to calm the physical symptoms. Just this once, she told herself. Tomorrow would be better. But tomorrow brought Sam and the promised beach weekend. Too late to back out, too exhausted to fight it, Mira found herself in Sam's car on Saturday morning, driving south along Highway 1. "No work talk," Sam reminded her as they crossed the Golden Gate Bridge. "And I have your laptop in my trunk, so don't even think about sneaking in some coding." The beach house belonged to Sam's friend Maya, a graphic designer who'd escaped the tech industry for a quieter life. The house was small but charming, with weathered wood siding and large windows facing the ocean. 3 other friends had already arrived. David, a former Innovatech colleague who now ran a surf shop, Lisa, a therapist who specialized in addiction, and Chris, Maya's boyfriend, who worked as a carpenter. Normal people. People with lives outside their professions. The first day was torture. Myra's phone stayed in her pocket despite promises of emergency-only use. Every time someone laughed or splashed in the waves, she thought about code reviews waiting for her approval, tickets aging in the queue, the slowly degrading performance metrics on the Thompson integration. By Saturday night, sitting around a bonfire, she was a raw nerve-ending. The group shared stories, played acoustic guitar, passed around snacks. Mira nursed a single beer, her first alcohol in months because it didn't mix well with her medications, and tried to remember how to be a person. "So, Mira," Lisa said during a lull in conversation, "Sam tells us you're one of the coding geniuses at Innovatech." "I'm just a developer," Mira deflected. "Don't let her modesty fool you," Sam interjected. "She built the entire authentication system that half the valley uses." Praise made her uncomfortable. These people saw her as accomplished, successful. If they knew the truth, the pills, the lies, the fainting episodes, would they still look at her with respect? Later, as the group prepared for bed, Lisa found Mira on the deck looking out at the dark ocean. "Mind if I join you?" Lisa asked, settling into the adjacent chair without waiting for an answer. "Sam mentioned you lost your father recently." "I'm sorry." "Thank you," Mira said automatically. "I lost my dad 5 years ago," Lisa continued. "Heart attack." He was 53, never took a sick day in his life, and then one Tuesday afternoon he was gone. Mira looked at her, really looked. How did you handle it?" "Terribly at first. I threw myself into work, tried to numb the grief with wine and sleeping pills. It wasn't until I passed my license exam, I was studying to be a therapist, that I realized I needed therapy myself." "What helped?" "Time. Talk therapy." actually feeling my feelings instead of medicating them away. And the hardest part, forgiving myself for not being perfect. The words hit too close to home. What if you can't forgive yourself? I spent 6 months thinking I should have made him go to the doctor, should have insisted on heart scans, should have somehow prevented the unpreventable. Lisa smiled sadly. Grief isn't about should-haves. It's about accepting what is and finding a way to keep living. And the guilt is part of it. But so is the healing. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. That night, in the unfamiliar bed of the beach house, Mira lay awake listening to waves crash against the shore. Her body ached for Ambien, her mind ricocheted between work tasks and grief, but something about the ocean's rhythm was soothing. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion finally pulled her under into the deepest natural sleep she'd had in months. She woke to sunlight streaming through sheer curtains and the smell of coffee and pancakes. Downstairs, Sam was making breakfast while David and Maya lounged at the kitchen table, newspapers spread out. Actual paper newspapers, something Mira hadn't seen in years. She lives, Sam announced, sliding a plate of pancakes in front of her. Did you sleep okay? Actually, yes. The admission felt strange. When was the last time she'd slept naturally without pharmaceutical assistance? After breakfast, the group decided on a hike through the redwoods. Mira initially resisted, concerned about missing work emails, but found herself unable to maintain her anxiety when faced with trees that had stood for centuries. Nature, it seemed, operated on a different timeline than Silicon Valley. During the hike, she found herself walking beside Chris, who spoke about woodworking with the same passion she once felt for coding. There's something about working with your hands, he explained, helping her over a fallen log. When you build something physical, there's an immediate connection between your effort and the result. It grounds you. I used to code with that same feeling, Mira admitted. Before everything got so complicated. Before the pressure. Before the deadlines. Before the world convinced you that your worth was measured in output instead of humanity. Casual insight struck her as profound. When had she started measuring her worth in commits and pull requests instead of who she was as a person? That evening, after another day of forced unplugging, the group gathered for dinner. Maya had prepared a feast, fresh-caught fish, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. As they ate, conversation flowed naturally. No one checked their phones. No one talked about work stress or quarterly metrics. I don't do these weekends to escape, Sam said at one point. I do them to remember. Remember who I am beyond my job, beyond my addiction recovery, beyond all the labels society puts on us. What are you beyond all that? Mira asked, genuinely curious. Sam grinned. I'm a person who makes terrible puns, loves bad karaoke, and once spent 3 months learning to juggle just to impress a date. Table laughed. Lisa shared that she had terrible handwriting but loved calligraphy anyway. David admitted he was terrified of public speaking but taught surf lessons to overcome his fear. Maya revealed she'd failed her driver's test 5 times before passing. Imperfect humans, all of them. And somehow they'd found ways to be okay with their imperfections. Sunday morning, as they prepared to leave, Mira felt a strange resistance to returning to her normal life. The weekend had shown her glimpses of what existence could be like without the constant chemical intervention, without the obsessive work focus. Same time next month? Sam asked as they loaded the car. Maybe, Mira said, then corrected herself. Yes. Actually, yes. Back in Silicon Valley, the real world crashed over her like a wave. Emails piled up despite the weekend, several marked as urgent. The development team had pushed new commits that broke the staging environment. Jordan had scheduled a quick check-in for Monday morning. But something had shifted. Instead of immediately diving into the chaos, Mira made coffee and sat by her window, watching the city wake up. She thought about Chris's words, about worth being measured in humanity, not output. Her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. Mom mentioned you're not returning her calls. Should I be worried? Instead of the usual defensive response, Mira typed, "I've been struggling. Can we talk this week?" His reply came immediately, "Of course. Whenever you're ready." At work, she approached the day differently. When Jordan asked about her availability for overtime, she said, "I can work late tonight, but I need to maintain boundaries going forward." For weeks into recovery, Mira stood in her bathroom, staring at the wall where her pill bottles used to line up like soldiers. Now only 2 remained, a lower dose of anti-anxiety medication prescribed by her new psychiatrist, and a sleep aid for occasional use. The minimalism felt foreign yet liberating. Her phone alarm sounded, 7 a.m. meeting with Jordan. She'd been dreading this conversation since requesting it last week. Despite 3 months of sobriety and steadily improving mental health, imposter syndrome still whispered that her honesty would cost her everything. At Innovatech, the morning buzz felt different now that she wasn't artificially enhanced. Colors seemed more muted, sounds less sharp, but reality held a steadiness she'd forgotten existed. "Thanks for meeting early," she told Jordan as they settled in a conference room. His usual coffee was present, but he'd stopped bringing her one after learning about her caffeine reduction. "Of course. You wanted to discuss the project timeline reassessment? Actually, I need to talk about something more personal." She'd rehearsed this speech with her therapist, but now the words felt clumsy. "I know I've been inconsistent these past few months. I haven't been honest with you about why." Jordan set down his coffee, giving her full attention. "I've been dealing with anxiety and depression exacerbated by my father's death. I was self-medicating in ways that weren't healthy. I'm getting help now, but I want you to know the full picture so we can adjust my role accordingly if needed." The silence stretched. Jordan's expression remained thoughtful rather than shocked. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he said finally. "I've suspected something was going on. The late-night commits, the fainting incident, the inconsistent performance despite your obvious talent. You knew. I've managed teams for 15 years, Mira. I've seen brilliant people struggle with various pressures. The question isn't whether you've had difficulties, it's whether you're taking steps to address them. Which you clearly are." Relief flooded through her. "I appreciate that. I'm committed to my work, but I need to maintain boundaries to stay healthy." "What would help?" Question surprised her. "Honestly, sometimes I need mental health days that aren't just disguised as sick days. And occasionally adjusting deadlines when my brain feels like static." "Done. Anything else?" "I think that's it. I don't want special treatment. I want to earn my place here." Jordan shook his head slowly. "You already have, Mira. The authentication system you built? Still the foundation of our security infrastructure. One of our biggest clients specifically requested features be developed by you. Your place here isn't in question." Walking back to her desk, Mira felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of pretense had lifted. Sam, who'd been watching from their desk, gave a subtle thumbs up. Later that morning, as Mira worked through a sprint backlog, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Dr. Sandra Wright from Riverside Medical. We have an opening for outpatient mental health services if you're still interested." Mira had applied to their program weeks ago, during a particularly difficult period of withdrawal. She'd assumed her application had been lost in the healthcare bureaucracy. "Yes, I'm still interested. When can I start?" "Next Monday. Group sessions Mondays and Wednesdays, individual therapy Fridays. We also have peer support meetings daily." Mira hesitated before responding. Commitment felt enormous, 3 structured therapy sessions plus daily peer support. But she remembered her therapist's words. "Recovery isn't a part-time job. I'll be there." That evening, instead of stopping at the grocery store on her way home, Mira took a detour to her parents' old neighborhood. The house had been sold after her father's death, but she found herself parking across the street, staring at the garage where he'd spent countless hours restoring cars. The current owners had painted the exterior blue, Her father would have hated that. He'd insisted on keeping the original 1960s green, claiming it had character. She smiled at the memory, tears pricking her eyes. Her phone rang. Mom. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. Leo said you're coming for dinner Sunday? Yes. I'm bringing someone if that's okay. A friend from work? Of course. Anyone special? Mira glanced at Sam's contact photo on her dashboard. They'd been attending NA meetings together, sharing a unique bond of recovery and tech industry survivors. Recently, their after-meeting coffee chats had evolved into something deeper, though neither had acknowledged it explicitly. Maybe, Mira admitted. Well, I'm just happy you're coming. I'll make that sesame chicken you like. After the call, Mira drove to the cemetery. Her father's headstone was simple. David Chen, 1960 to 2024, beloved father and engineer. Fresh flowers lay beside it, Leo's work probably. She sat cross-legged on the grass, pulling out her laptop. This time, she wasn't escaping into code. Instead, she opened a document she'd been drafting with her therapist. Letters to Dad. Dear Dad, I haven't been to see you properly since the funeral. I'm sorry. I've been carrying so much guilt about not being here when you had the stroke, about all the times I chose work over family dinners, about the ways I turned myself into someone you wouldn't recognize. I started taking pills to keep up with everything. First, it was just to stay focused, to prove I deserved to be at Innovatech. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to function without them. I forgot how to be your daughter, Leo's sister, Mom's child. The worst part is that I built this life thinking I was honoring what you taught me about work ethic and achievement. Instead, I nearly destroyed myself. But I'm getting better now. I'm learning that strength isn't about working myself to death or numbing every uncomfortable feeling. It's about facing things honestly, asking for help when I need it, and accepting that imperfection is human. I wish you were here to see me now, 3 months into recovery. I think you'd be proud. Not because I'm writing perfect code or impressing clients, but because I'm finally learning to take care of myself. I hope you're at peace. I'm working on finding mine. Love. Mira. She saved the document and closed the laptop. The sun was setting, painting the cemetery in shades of gold and orange. As she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed with a text from Sam. NA meets at 7 tonight. You coming? Yes. Want to grab dinner after? Always. The NA meeting, a small group that met in a community center, Mira shared for the first time. Not about drugs or alcohol, but about prescription medication dependency and the aftermath of loss. I used to think strength was about never showing weakness, she told the circle of faces. My father was an engineer, and I thought I had to be like him, methodical, controlled, always with the right answer. But grief doesn't have right answers. Neither does addiction. After the meeting, she and Sam walked to their favorite pho place. The restaurant's warm lighting and aromatic broth had become part of their recovery ritual. I told Jordan everything this morning, Mira said, breaking apart her spring rolls. How'd he take it? Better than I expected. Sometimes I wonder if people are more understanding than we give them credit for. In my experience, yes. But it takes courage to find out. Sam paused, choosing words carefully. I'm proud of you. For getting help, for being honest, for not giving up when things got hard. The simple words made Myra's throat tight with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. You were the first person who saw through my bullshit and cared enough to call me out. I recognized a fellow struggler, Sam grinned. Takes one to know one. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that no longer felt oppressive to Mira. She'd learned to differentiate between isolating loneliness and peaceful solitude. Can I ask you something? Sam said eventually. Sure. Your dad, do you think he would have wanted you to work yourself to death to honor his memory? Questions struck at something fundamental. No. He used to lecture me about work-life balance when I started in tech. He'd say, "Don't be like me, kiddo. I miss too much trying to provide for the family." Sounds like a wise man. He was. I just couldn't hear it through all my other noise. The following Monday, Mira attended her first group therapy session at Riverside. The room held 8 chairs in a circle, 5 already occupied when she arrived. Dr. Wright, the facilitator, was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an unhurried demeanor. "Everyone, this is Mira. She'll be joining us going forward." The group members welcomed her with nods and smiles. No introductions beyond first names, a boundary she appreciated. During the session, she listened to stories that mirrored her own: professionals who'd turned to medication to cope with pressure, people who'd lost themselves in the pursuit of external validation, individuals learning to rebuild their sense of self. When it was her turn to speak, she shared her story honestly for the second time in days. The act of repeatedly voicing her truth seemed to diminish its power over her. "Addiction comes in many forms," Dr. Wright noted after Mira finished. "Society often glorifies workaholism and pharmaceutical enhancement in pursuit of success. Recovery means questioning those narratives." The words resonated deeply. Mira had never considered how her willingness to self-destruct in pursuit of professional achievement was praised rather than questioned in tech culture. After her individual session on Friday, Dr. Wright offered a perspective that shifted Mira's understanding. "Grief isn't something we get over, something we learn to carry differently. Your father's death revealed patterns that were already present: the perfectionism, the fear of failure, the isolation. His passing didn't create these vulnerabilities, it illuminated them." That weekend, Mira took Sam to meet her family. The drive to her mother's house felt different with Sam in the passenger seat. Instead of anxiety about family judgment, she felt curiosity about how these parts of her life would integrate. Leo answered the door, immediately shaking Sam's hand with genuine warmth. "So you're the friend who's been keeping my sister sane." "Just returning the favor," Sam replied. Her mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "Mira! And you must be Sam." She switched immediately to hostess mode, ushering them inside, offering drinks, pointing out family photos lining the hallway. Over dinner, the promised sesame chicken plus an abundance of other dishes, the conversation flowed surprisingly well. Sam asked about her father's car restoration hobby, which prompted Leo to tell stories about helping in the garage as a kid. Her mother shared anecdotes about teaching English to immigrant families, drawing parallels to Sam's volunteer work with coding boot camps for underrepresented groups. "I wish Dad could have met you," Mira told Sam later, as they sat on the back porch while her mother and Leo cleaned up inside. "He would have liked your commitment to making tech more accessible." "Tell me about him," Sam requested. "Not the surface stuff, something real." Mira thought for a moment. "He used to wake up at 5 a.m. to cook breakfast for us before school. Even when he was exhausted from working late, he'd make these elaborate pancakes shaped like animals or cartoon characters. As we got older, Leo and I pretended to be embarrassed, but secretly we loved it." "What stopped him?" "We did. We started sleeping later, rushing to school, grabbing granola bars. He stopped when we stopped appreciating it." The realization hit her hard. "God, I took so much for granted." Sam reached across the small table, gently touching her hand. "That's being a teenager." He knew that. Parents understand childhood gratitude comes later. Inside, Mira could hear her mother laughing at something Leo said. The sound was lighter than she remembered, even with grief still present. Maybe healing wasn't linear. Moments of joy could coexist with loss. "I should tell you something," Sam said quietly. "About why I pushed so hard for you to get help." "You don't have to." "I had a friend in college. Brilliant coder, even better than you if you can believe it. She was on Adderall, Xanax, the whole cocktail. One night she mixed the wrong combination and didn't wake up." Confession hung in the air between them. Mira understood now. Sam's persistence hadn't been about fixing her, but about preventing a repeat of past tragedy. I'm sorry, she said simply. Don't be sorry. Just stay alive. The world needs minds like yours, but it needs them healthy. When they returned to the kitchen to help with dishes, Myra's mother caught her eye and smiled, a smile that held approval and relief. Later, walking Sam to their car, Leo pulled her aside. I like them, he said simply. Me too, Mira admitted. You seem different. Calmer. More present. I'm trying to be. Good. The old super-achieving, never-sleeping sister was exhausting to worry about. 6 months into recovery, Mira had established a rhythm that would have seemed impossibly slow to her former self but now felt sustainable. She coded efficiently during designated hours, attended her 3 weekly therapy sessions without guilt, and had actually taken 2 consecutive days off for her birthday, the first vacation she'd taken in 3 years. On a Tuesday morning, she arrived at Innovatech to find an urgent email flagged in red, Critical, Thompson Integration Security Breach. Her immediate reaction was familiar, heart racing, adrenaline spiking, the phantom itch for Adderall to hyper-focus on the problem. Instead, she took 3 deep breaths, techniques learned from Dr. Wright, and methodically assessed the situation. The breach was significant but contained. Someone had exploited a vulnerability in the authentication layer she'd written, a flaw invisible until now because it required such specific conditions to trigger. Her immediate thought was self-flagellation. How did I miss this? I'm not as good as I used to be. But something had changed in her thinking patterns. She approached the problem analytically rather than emotionally. She gathered the security team, delegated tasks, and worked through the patch systematically. By evening, they'd resolved the issue and were implementing additional safeguards. Nice work, Jordan told her as they wrapped up. The old Mira would have been a stress tornado, taking over every keyboard, running on pure panic. This was textbook crisis management. His observation struck her. I feel like I work slower now. You work differently. And honestly, your code quality has improved. Fewer bugs to fix later means less frantic patching. That evening, she shared the security incident at her NA meeting. I realized I've been viewing recovery as making me less capable, she confessed. Today I saw that sobriety isn't about diminishing abilities, it's about using them sustainably. After the meeting, Sam suggested they take a walk instead of their usual coffee routine. The November air was crisp, the Bay Area evening cooling rapidly as fog rolled in from the Pacific. I've been wanting to talk to you about something, Sam began as they strolled through the quiet streets of Oakland. I've been offered a position at a startup. Myra's stomach dropped. Oh. It's a wellness tech company, actually. They're building mindfulness apps for high-pressure industries. They want someone who understands both the technical challenges and the human ones. That sounds perfect for you. It would mean more responsibility. Quitty. Longer hours initially. Sam, this is your decision. I don't want to. I turned it down. They stopped beneath a streetlight, moths circling overhead. What? Why? Because perfect opportunities that require sacrificing balance aren't really perfect. Sam's eyes met hers. I spent 3 years learning to value my health over ambition. I don't want to test those lessons. But also, Sam continued, I've been thinking about starting something smaller, more aligned with actual wellness rather than venture capital wellness. Maybe consulting with you? Helping other companies implement sustainable development practices? The suggestion resonated immediately. We could teach what we've learned. Exactly. No pills required. They resumed walking, hands finding each other in the dark. Possibility felt bright and terrifying, building something together professionally and personally. Speaking of taking risks, Mira said, I've been invited to speak at Stanford's computer science department about sustainable coding practices and mental health. That's huge. I keep thinking they'll realize I'm a fraud. That recovery doesn't qualify as expertise. You've lived what most people only theorize about. That's the opposite of fraud. 2 weeks later, Mira stood before a lecture hall filled with computer science students at Stanford. Her pulse was elevated but manageable, anxiety without the chemical enhancement she once thought necessary for public speaking. How many of you are currently taking medication to improve your academic performance? She began. Hands crept up slowly across the auditorium, a visual representation of Silicon Valley's open secret. How many are doing it without prescriptions? More hands rose. The room buzzed with nervous energy. I was you, she continued. Top of my class, multiple tech offers convinced my brain was an optimization problem to be solved with chemistry. By 26, I was a senior engineer at a Fortune 500 company building authentication systems used by millions and slowly dying from the inside out. She detailed her descent without dramatization. The late nights, the mounting dosages, the fainting episode that forced a reckoning. The students leaned forward, recognizing their potential futures in her past. The dangerous lie of our industry is that burnout is the price of excellence, she explained. That real innovation requires sacrificing humanity. I'm here to tell you that's not only false, it's actively counterproductive. She presented data from companies implementing wellness initiatives. Higher retention rates, fewer critical errors, more consistent innovation. Numbers spoke to engineers in ways empathy alone couldn't. During the Q&A session, a student raised her hand. But what if we fall behind? If we don't push harder than everyone else, someone in another country will outpace us. I used to believe that too, Mira responded. But sustainable pace beats unsustainable speed every time. Would you rather sprint for a year and crash or maintain a steady pace for a decade? Innovation is a marathon, not a suicide run. After the lecture, multiple students approached her with variations of the same question. How do I start recovery when my entire life is built around these habits? She gave each the same core advice. Start with honesty. Find one person, friend, therapist, doctor, and tell them the truth. The first step is always admitting you can't do it alone. Walking across Stanford's campus afterward, Sam beside her, Mira felt something profound. Not the artificial confidence of medication, but the earned stability of self-knowledge. These weren't just students she was helping, they were her former self, given a map before reaching the disaster she'd barely survived. "Want to grab dinner?" Sam asked as they reached the parking lot. "Actually, I think I want to call Mom. Tell her about today." Sam smiled. "I'll wait in the car." Her mother answered on the second ring. "Mira, how did it go?" "Really well. I talked to about 300 students about everything. Pills, the fainting, recovery. I never thought I'd be grateful for hitting bottom, but today I was. Your father would be so proud." The words that once would have triggered guilt now brought comfort. "I think so too. And Mom? I'm bringing Sam for Christmas. There's something I've been meaning to tell you about us." "I already know, sweetheart. I have eyes. I just want you both to be happy and healthy." After ending the call, Mira slid into Sam's car. "Christmas with my family? Are you ready for that level of commitment?" "I've learned something about fear," Mira said. "The things that terrify me most are usually the things I need to do most." During the drive home, her phone pinged, an email from one of the Stanford students. "Dr. Chen, thank you for today. I've been taking my roommate's ADHD medication to keep up with assignments. Your talk made me realize I'm not alone and don't have to continue. I have an appointment with Campus Health Services tomorrow. This email might save my life." Mira saved the message in a folder she'd created called Why It Matters. On difficult days, when imposter syndrome whispered that she had nothing valuable to offer, she read these reminders of impact. "Dinner at our place or eating out?" Sam asked as they entered Oakland. Our place still felt novel, though they'd been living together for 3 months. The small craftsman house had felt like a bold step, but it had worked. Separate workspaces, shared meals, complementary recovery routines. Home, Mira decided. I want to cook something that takes time. Therapy at 2 p.m. tomorrow, right? Yeah, and I want to talk to Dr. Wright about expanding my consulting work. I've been thinking about developing a workshop series, sustainable sprint methodologies or something. The tech world needs it. That evening, they made stir-fry together, moving around the kitchen with practiced ease. Debug, their shelter mutt, named for Sam's coding humor, watched hopefully for dropped vegetables. This domestic peace felt hard-won and carefully maintained. 6 months ago, I was planning meal replacements and wondering if I'd survive the month, Mira mused, chopping bell peppers. Now I'm teaching Stanford students about recovery and cooking with my partner. Growth isn't always linear, Sam observed, but it's usually worth it. After dinner, Mira opened her laptop not to code, but to draft an email to a tech industry conference about presenting a keynote on sustainable development practices. Her proposal included hard data, personal narrative, and practical implementation strategies. As she typed, she noticed her hands, steady, purposeful, no tremor or acceleration from stimulants. These were the tools she'd feared would fail without chemical enhancement. Instead, they'd become more reliable. Turning in early tonight, she announced, closing the laptop at 10 p.m., another boundary that would have seemed impossible before. In bed, Sam reading beside her, Mira felt the rare combination of contentment and ambition. Not the desperate drive that had fueled her addiction, but the sustainable energy of purpose aligned with values. "What are you thinking about?" Sam asked, noticing her expression. "How grateful I am. For recovery, for you, for second chances. And how I want to use this platform to make things better for others." Sam set down their book. "You're already doing that. I want to do more. One sustainable step at a time?" Mira smiled. "Exactly." As she drifted toward natural sleep, no Ambien required, her last thought was about tomorrow's consulting call with another tech company interested in implementing wellness policies. The work continued, but the worker had changed. Recovery wasn't a one-time achievement. It was a daily practice, a choice repeated morning after morning. And for the first time since her father's death, Mira looked forward to making that choice again tomorrow. 9 months into recovery, Mira stood before her bathroom mirror, preparing for what felt like a milestone, her first international keynote address. The Global Tech Conference in Singapore had invited her to speak about human-centered development in the age of AI. Her travel bag was methodically packed, medications secured in their proper compartments, backup prescriptions safely stored, documentation for customs clearly marked. This kind of preparation had become second nature, replacing the chaotic scramble of her audition days. "I've been traveling internationally for work since we were 22, Sam observed, watching her organize pill organizers. "First time I've seen you pack medication without a panic attack." "First time I've traveled with proper dosing," Mira replied. Her prescribed benzos for flying were carefully counted, just enough to manage air travel anxiety without excess. The simplicity of legitimate medication felt remarkable. The 14-hour flight to Singapore tested every recovery tool she'd developed. During a particularly bumpy stretch over the Pacific, her mind reflexively sought pharmaceutical comfort. Instead, she practiced the grounding techniques Dr. Wright had taught: 5 things she could see, her book, the overhead bin, her seatmate's laptop; 4 things she could touch, armrest, seat fabric, her phone, the water bottle; 3 things she could hear, engine hum, distant conversation, her own breathing. By the time they landed, she felt tired but present, a vast improvement from her last international trip when she'd medicated through every discomfort and arrived more exhausted than when she started. Singapore's gardens by the bay became an unexpected teacher. Standing beneath the super trees, vertical gardens that blended nature with technology, Mira felt something shift. The metal structures supported real plants, creating ecosystems that thrived because of, not despite, the artificial framework. "It's like what we're trying to build in tech culture," she told Sam as they wandered among the flora. "Structure that supports growth rather than forcing it." "Your keynote metaphor?" "Exactly." Conference Center hummed with the familiar energy of tech gatherings, the barely contained competition, the startup pitches, the promise of disruption. But Mira approached it differently now. Where she once would have networked frantically, popping Adderall to maintain social energy, she chose her interactions thoughtfully. During a panel discussion on the future of work, she found herself seated beside Dr. Li Wei, a prominent neuroscientist studying computational thinking and mental health. "Your work on sustainable development practices caught my attention," Dr. Li commented during a break. "Have you considered the neurological aspects? We're seeing fascinating changes in brain chemistry among developers who implement mindfulness practices." They discussed research showing how meditation actually altered neural pathways associated with coding proficiency. Conversation sparked an idea that would inform her keynote the next day. That evening, alone in her hotel room, Mira video called her therapy group back in California. Technology had made recovery more accessible, allowing continuity even across continents and time zones. "How's Singapore treating you?" Maria, her sponsor, asked. "It's beautiful. But being around so much tech energy is triggering in ways I didn't expect. And not for relapse, just reminders of who I used to be. And who you are now. Someone with boundaries. I actually said no to a late-night networking dinner. 2 years ago, I would have seen that as career suicide." "2 years ago, you were committing slow suicide through work," observed Thomas, another group member. "Saying no to dinner probably means saying yes to living." The validation from people who truly understood helped center her for the next day's presentation. Her keynote began with an unusual opening, a live coding demonstration where she intentionally made mistakes, then methodically debugged them without time pressure or visible stress. "This is sustainable development," she announced to the packed auditorium. "Not perfect, not fast, but functional and maintainable. The same principles apply to human systems." She presented her core framework. Sustainable tech leadership principles. Performance metrics must include wellness indicators. Sprint planning requires recovery time. Always-on culture breeds eventual system failure. Diversity includes neurological differences. Debugging code is easier than debugging humans. The neuroscience research from Dr. Li added weight to her arguments. Brain scans showed that developers who practiced mindfulness had better problem-solving skills and fewer errors. The meditation wasn't slowing them down, it was optimizing their cognitive function. "Productivity isn't about how many hours you can code," she explained. "It's about how consistently you can deliver quality work over time. Addiction promises productivity while delivering eventual failure. Recovery offers genuine sustainability." During the Q&A, a question she'd anticipated came up. "I hear what you're saying, but Singapore operates 24/7. How do we compete globally with reduced hours? Show me one mathematical proof that defines success as self-destruction," she responded. Countries with better work-life balance, Denmark, Netherlands, Singapore's neighbor Bhutan, don't have worse innovation records. They have happier innovators. For the keynote, job offers flooded in, not for traditional tech positions but for consulting roles in corporate wellness, speaking engagements, even a book deal offer. The irony struck her. The work she'd been desperate to prove herself worthy of had come easily once she stopped destroying herself trying to obtain it. "You were brilliant," Sam said at the reception, bringing her sparkling water instead of champagne. "I counted at least 50 people taking notes during your debugging demonstration. It helped having someone supportive in the audience." Mira glanced around the room, where multiple conversations featured phrases she'd coined in her talk. "You know what's wild? I always thought vulnerability would destroy my credibility. Instead, it's become my qualification." They flew home through Tokyo, taking advantage of the stopover to visit a traditional Japanese garden. Concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection, resonated deeply with Myra's recovery journey. Japanese gardens are designed to look natural but are actually carefully planned, she observed. Like recovery. It appears effortless only after tremendous intentional work. Back in Oakland, she immediately reconnected with her support systems. therapy session on Friday, NA meeting on Monday, regular check-ins with her psychiatrist. The international trip had tested her routines, but they held firm. At Innovatech, she found her desk decorated with a welcome back banner and a stack of sticky notes from colleagues sharing brief messages of support. Corporate culture was evolving. Mental health conversations that once happened in whispers now occurred openly. "We missed you," Jordan said during their catch-up meeting. "But more importantly, we respect that you took care of yourself first." 3 months after Singapore, Mira received an unexpected invitation. Stanford wanted to create a new course, CS 299, Sustainable Software Development. They asked her to design the curriculum and serve as primary instructor for the spring semester. "Teaching full-time?" Sam asked when she shared the offer over dinner. "That's a significant career pivot." "I know. Part of me thinks I should stick to pure engineering, prove that recovery doesn't mean stepping back. And the other part?" Mira considered. "Believes that teaching the next generation might prevent more damage than any system I could code. Prevention over crisis management." She negotiated a split role, teaching 2 days a week while maintaining part-time consulting. The university agreed, recognizing the value of active industry experience. Her first day teaching brought memories flooding back. Walking through Stanford's campus, she passed buildings where she'd once hidden in bathrooms to take unprescribed Adderall before finals. Now she stood in front of a lecture hall, preparing to teach students how to build careers without destroying themselves. "This isn't a traditional CS course," she began. "We'll code, absolutely. But we'll also discuss sleep hygiene, proper medication use, the signs of burnout, and how to maintain creativity without destroying mental health. Because the best algorithm means nothing if implementing it breaks you." The students seemed skeptical initially. Another lecture about balance from someone who'd made it. Then she showed them her medical records from 2 years prior, with permission from her doctors. Heart irregularities, elevated liver enzymes, signs of prolonged stem damage. "This isn't theoretical," she stated plainly. "This is what happens when we treat our brains like machines to be optimized rather than organs to be maintained." Throughout the semester, students submitted assignments differently. Instead of last-minute all-nighters, she required progress documentation, proof of incremental work rather than cramming. Peer reviews focused on methodology, not just output. One student, Marcus, approached her after class midway through the semester. "I've been using my roommate's Ritalin to study. Your class made me realize I'm heading down the same path you took." "What are you going to do about it?" "Talk to disability services about getting tested for ADHD. If I need medication, get it legitimately. And if you don't need it, learn to study differently. Maybe slower but sustainably." These conversations accumulated like deposits in a purpose account. Each student who changed course represented lives potentially saved from the destruction she'd experienced. By the end of the semester, enrollment requests for her next class exceeded capacity threefold. The university proposed expanding to multiple sections, but Mira negotiated instead for training other instructors in her methodology. "I can't scale linearly," she explained to the dean. "But I can teach others to teach. Sustainable impact requires sustainable leadership." On the 1-year anniversary of her recovery, marked by a quiet celebration with close friends rather than social media declarations, Mira received a letter from someone she'd forgotten, Dr. Martinez, the urgent care physician who'd first documented her irregular heartbeat. "Dear Ms. Colleagues sent me your TED Talk. I remember treating you when you fainted at work. The time I was worried about your heart. Seeing you now, healthy and helping others, I'm reminded why I became a doctor. Your story has changed how I approach patients showing early signs of stimulant abuse. Instead of just addressing symptoms, I'm having conversations about underlying pressure and perfectionism. You've influenced medical practice just by getting better. Thank you for the reminder that our words matter, even in brief encounters." The letter brought Mira to tears. Recovery's ripples extended further than she'd imagined. influencing not just tech culture but healthcare approaches to professional pressure. That summer, she received another unexpected honor, nomination for the Technology Impact Award, recognizing individuals who'd fundamentally changed how the industry operates. The nomination letter cited her work in redefining sustainable development practices and pioneering corporate wellness initiatives. "They want to give me an award for almost killing myself and then not," she joked to Sam while reviewing the nomination. "They want to honor how you transformed that near death into systematic change." There's a difference. The awards ceremony was held in San Francisco. As Mira prepared her acceptance speech, she thought about the arc from that first fainting episode to standing in the spotlight for positive transformation. "I'm uncomfortable with individual awards for what was essentially collaborative survival," she began her speech. "Every person in recovery relies on a network of support: therapists, doctors, family, friends, even strangers in group meetings who share truth when isolation wants silence." She looked directly at the tech executives and founders in the audience. "This award isn't just mine. It belongs to every employee brave enough to admit they're struggling, every manager who prioritizes people over deadline, every company that views wellness as infrastructure rather than luxury." The standing ovation felt less like applause for her and more like industry acknowledgement of needed change. Backstage afterward, multiple CEOs approached with genuine questions about implementing wellness programs. "It's not enough to offer meditation apps," she advised repeatedly. "You need to examine why your employees need escape in the first place. Fix the pressure before treating the symptoms." 2 years into recovery found Mira in an unexpected position, established expert on sustainable tech culture. She consulted for Fortune 500 companies, spoke at conferences globally, and maintained a clinical practice teaching mindfulness to engineers. But perhaps her most impactful work happened quietly, in one-on-one meetings with developers showing early warning signs, in policy recommendations that seemed small but prevented large-scale burnout, in the culture shift at companies where "I need a mental health day" became as acceptable as "I have a cold." On a crisp October morning, Sam found her on their back porch, journaling over coffee. Practice had become as essential as her medication, a way to process growth and setbacks with equal attention. "What's today's entry?" Sam asked, joining her with their own mug. Mira read aloud. "Year 2, Day 47. Led meditation session for Google's AI safety team. Surreal to help ground the people building tools that will shape humanity's future." Recovery isn't just personal anymore, it's preventive public health. She paused, thinking, "You know what surprises me most about this journey?" "What's that?" "I thought recovery would shrink my world, make me less ambitious, less capable, less connected. Instead, it expanded everything. Better relationships, clearer goals, actual friendships beyond work obligations. I was so afraid of losing my edge, I couldn't see I was already lost." Sam nodded. "The edge you were terrified of losing was the same edge that was cutting you to pieces." "Exactly." She closed the journal. "And now you've built something more sustainable. And you're teaching others to build the same." That afternoon, responding to a Stanford student's email about managing anxiety before job interviews, Mira wrote, "Remember that interviewers are looking for potential, not perfection. A candidate who can articulate their growth areas and management strategies is more valuable than one who pretends invulnerability." The same challenges that make interviewing difficult, caring deeply about quality, analytical thinking, attention to detail, are also your strengths. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety but to prevent it from eliminating you. You've already proven you can handle undergraduate CS at Stanford. Trust that foundation. And remember, any company that expects you to compromise your mental health for a job offer isn't a company worth working for. She hit send, then added a calendar reminder to check in with the student next week. This kind of follow-through, caring about outcomes beyond individual interactions, was recovery manifesting as responsibility. Later that evening, debugging a particularly complex algorithm for a client, Mira noticed her thought process. Where once she would have powered through with stimulants, forcing solutions through sheer mental force, she now approached problems iteratively. Break it down. Test theories. Step away when stuck. Return with fresh perspective. The solution came not through intensity but through patience. Code was cleaner, more elegant, more maintainable. She saved the file and checked her watch, 6 p.m. exactly. Time to log off, make dinner, be present for the evening. Walking to the kitchen where Sam was already starting their meal prep, Mira reflected on the transformation that still sometimes surprised her. She was technically as capable as ever, perhaps more so, with clarity and consistent energy. But the relationship to her work had fundamentally changed. "Penny for your thoughts?" Sam asked, noting her expression. "Just appreciating sustainability. Code in work and life. It all connects. Speaking of connections, your mother called. She's excited about Thanksgiving. First holiday season without Dad," Mira acknowledged. "But also first one where I won't be secretly popping pills to get through family time. Progress. Definitely progress." As they chopped vegetables together, Myra's phone buzzed. A text from a tech journalist wanting to interview her for an article about recovery in Silicon Valley. She archived it for tomorrow, maintaining the boundary between work and home time. This was recovery, not the dramatic triumph of overcoming addiction, but the quiet victory of sustainable living. Therapy appointments kept. Medications taken as prescribed. Work left at work. Family prioritized. Problems solved without sacrificing self. The next morning brought a request that would have once sent Mira spiraling. A critical system at a Fortune 100 client had failed, threatening a major product launch. Her first instinct was old patterns: rush to the office, cancel appointments, dive in until fixed. Instead, she took 30 minutes to assess. She called a meeting with her consulting team, delegated aspects to qualified colleagues, and established a sustainable response rotation. She worked her scheduled hours intensely, then handed off to the night team with comprehensive documentation. "This would have destroyed me before," she told her therapy group that week. "I would have owned the crisis as personal failing and worked until hospitalization or resolution, whichever came first." "And now?" asked David, a newer member struggling with tech industry pressure. "Now I see system failure as system problem, not individual responsibility. Our job is quality response, not martyrdom." Her balanced approach to the crisis resolution impressed the client more than heroic overwork would have. The CEO sent a personal note. "Your team's organized, sustainable response gave us confidence beyond the technical fix. This is the future of consulting." 3 months later, that same client approached her with an unusual proposal. They wanted to hire her to overhaul their entire engineering culture, not as CTO but as Chief Wellness Technology Officer, a position they were creating specifically for her approach. "We need someone who understands both the technology and the humanity," the CEO explained. "Traditional tech leadership optimizes for output. We want to optimize for what you call sustainable excellence." The offer included impressive compensation, equity, and most critically, full autonomy to implement change. But Mira had learned to evaluate opportunities through multiple lenses. "I need to discuss this with my partner and therapist," she told them. "Any position that requires deciding without consulting my support system isn't aligned with my values." The CEO smiled. "Take whatever time you need. The fact that you're setting that boundary tells us we're choosing the right person." That weekend, Mira and Sam hiked their favorite trail at Redwood Regional Park, discussing the opportunity among ancient trees that dwarfed human timescales. "It's everything I would have wanted 3 years ago," Mira acknowledged. "Corporate position, huge influence, equity that could set us up for life. But I've already changed careers twice, from developer to evangelist, then to teacher. Am I chasing opportunity or avoiding staying still with myself?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "When you were in active addiction, you were both hyperactive and completely stagnant. Always moving, never growing. Now you're questioning whether growth requires constant motion. Exactly. Plus, some of my best work has been small scale, one student, one company, one intervention at a time. Can I scale without losing the thing that makes the work valuable? They sat on a fallen log, watching dappled sunlight filter through branches. An hour passed in comfortable silence as Mira processed. I think I need to negotiate differently, she decided. Part-time advisory role. Help them build infrastructure for change rather than manage the day-to-day transformation. What would you do with the rest of your time? Keep teaching. Maybe write that book I've been drafting, debug your career, or something less tech bro. Continue one-on-one consulting for smaller companies. Portfolio approach to impact? Exactly. Sustainable influence across multiple areas rather than burning out trying to revolutionize one corporation. Her counterproposal, consulting 4 days a month for a lower equity package and flexibility to maintain her other commitments, was accepted immediately. Company valued her unique perspective enough to accommodate unusual terms. This is how the industry changes, the CEO noted during contract signing. When our best minds aren't forced to choose between influence and wellness. 6 months into her new role, Mira had helped implement mandatory therapy coverage for all employees, anonymous wellness tracking to identify department-level stress patterns, emotional labor hours where relationship management counted toward billable time, sprint planning that included explicit recovery periods, performance reviews measuring both output and sustainable practices. The results exceeded projections. Employee retention increased 34%. Critical errors decreased by 28%. Most surprisingly, product innovation accelerated. Teams given permission to rest generated more creative solutions. During a keynote at TechCrunch Disrupt, Mira presented these metrics alongside a bold claim: wellness isn't overhead, it's optimization. Tech world was listening now. What began as one woman's recovery had evolved into an industry-wide conversation about sustainable success. Universities redesigned curricula. Companies rewrote policies. The narrative was shifting from work hard, play hard to work smart, live well. Yet Mira remained grounded in the day-to-day reality of recovery. Every morning still began with medication taken as prescribed, therapy appointments still marked immovable in her calendar, NA meetings remained weekly touchstones. On the 2-year anniversary of her last relapse, a day she'd once feared would always feel fragile, she found stability in ritual rather than worry. She wrote in her journal, 2 years without misusing medications. Not because I never want to, but because I've built a life I don't want to escape from. Recovery gave me back more than addiction ever promised: real relationships, sustainable success, genuine self. Today's gratitude. For Dr. Martinez seeing past my lies to my heart irregularities. For Sam recognizing addiction patterns I couldn't see myself. For Mom learning to separate love from achievement. For Leo forgiving distance and finding closeness. For every student who trusted me with their struggles. For every company brave enough to prioritize people over profits. The future isn't certain, but neither was tomorrow 2 years ago. I'll take present-day peace over future promises any time. She closed the journal and prepared for her morning. Another Stanford lecture, another step toward normalizing wellness in tech culture, another day of recovery lived not as limitation but as leadership. Cursor would always blink, waiting for her to create. The difference now was that she brought her whole self to the keyboard, not just the part medicated into productivity but the complete human learning to code sustainable solutions to human problems. In the end, that was the greatest debugging achievement of all. 3 years of recovery brought unexpected stability. Mira sat cross-legged on her meditation cushion, morning light filtering through their Oakland Craftsman's windows, when her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. Hey sis, landed in SFO. Heading to your place now. Need to talk. Unusual for Leo to visit unannounced. As she prepared coffee, she noted her automatic concern without the familiar spike of anxiety that would have sent her reaching for medication. Growth looked like worry without panic. An hour later, Leo sat at their kitchen table, hands wrapped around his mug. 26, he carried himself with new confidence since completing his own recovery journey 18 months ago. But today his expression held something heavier. "I've been offered a job," he began. "Lead developer position at a startup in Shanghai. Chinese tech company wanting West Coast talent." "That's amazing," Mira said, though she sensed complexity in his hesitation. "Here's the thing, they want me to start in 3 months. Equity package is incredible. The work is cutting-edge AI ethics research, which you know I'm passionate about. But, it's a 24-month commitment minimum. No remote option. I'd be starting over again. New therapists, new support network, new 12-step meetings in a country where mental health stigma is still intense," Mira finished. She understood intimately. "You're weighing opportunity against recovery infrastructure." "Exactly. And I keep thinking, would the old me have even hesitated? Just packed up, chased the prestige, worried about health logistics later?" This was the question that defined their generation of tech workers, learning to evaluate opportunities through the lens of sustainability rather than pure advancement. "What does your sponsor say?" "She says to talk to you. Says someone else in the family has experience with international travel and recovery might help." Mira smiled. Over the past year, she'd consulted for companies across 3 continents, maintaining sobriety through connecting with NA international networks, carrying pharmacy-verified medications, and most importantly, building recovery practices that traveled as easily as her passport. "Want to take a walk?" "I think better in motion." Around Lake Merritt, joggers and dog walkers shared the path with them. Leo had always been her most honest sounding board, their shared DNA carrying both the brilliance and vulnerability that had nearly cost them everything. "Shanghai has a growing expat recovery community," Mira began. "I connected with their WhatsApp group last year when I consulted there. English-speaking NA meetings 3 times a week, solid therapist network. More infrastructure than you'd expect." "Really? Tech industry there is young, which means many people are dealing with similar pressures. Recovery is becoming part of their culture too, especially among international workers." They paused at a bench overlooking the lake. Egrets waded through shallow waters, the Oakland skyline reflecting off the surface. "The old question," Leo said, was would I be crazy to turn this down? The new question is, would I be crazy to go without ensuring I can maintain my health? Both questions matter now, Mira reflected. 3 years ago, I would have told you to chase any opportunity that validated your worth. Now I'd say, validate the opportunity by ensuring it supports your whole life. A family of ducks swam by, following patterns hidden beneath the water's surface. Mira thought about how recovery often meant learning to see those hidden patterns, the infrastructure that supported what looked like effortless movement. Can you negotiate a trial period? Visit for 2 weeks, meet the team, connect with the recovery community there? Leo brightened. They probably agree to that. They've been very accommodating so far. Accommodation often means they really want you. That's leverage for asking for what you need, not just professionally but personally. They completed another loop around the lake before heading back to the house. Sam had returned from their Saturday morning coding workshop for teenagers, the smell of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen. Leo's considering Shanghai for 2 years, Mira announced. Wow, Sam said, pulling him into a hug. That's huge. Scary huge. Appropriately scary, Leo laughed. Not terrifying, just sobering. Over Sam's homemade bread and soup, they discussed practicalities. Leo would need to research medication accessibility in China, understand the legal nuances of importing prescriptions, build a financial cushion for private international health insurance. I spent 3 months preparing for a 2-day Singapore conference, Mira shared. International recovery requires as much planning as international business. By evening, Leo had a framework for decision-making, a 2-week exploratory visit next month, interviews with local therapists via video call beforehand, and most importantly, a backup plan if recovery structures proved insufficient. "Thank you," he said before heading back to his hotel. "For not saying don't go or just go. For understanding it's complicated." After he left, Mira found herself on the porch journaling, a practice that remained essential even as therapy transitioned to monthly maintenance rather than weekly necessity. "Today, watched my brother navigate the intersection of ambition and recovery. Pride in watching him ask questions I never knew to ask at his age. Gratitude that our family learned, albeit painfully, that success without health is an empty victory." Sam joined her, carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. Their partner reading was another evening ritual that grounded them both. "I've been thinking," Sam said, settling into the adjacent chair, "about expanding our consulting practice. Maybe bringing on other professionals with lived recovery experience." The idea sparked immediate interest. "Creating systematic support for what we've been doing informally." Exactly. Tech companies keep asking for consultants who understand both code and psychology. Why not build a cooperative of recovered tech professionals? They sketched ideas late into the night, a consulting group that paired technical expertise with recovery wisdom, workshops teaching sustainable development practices, crisis intervention for teams showing burnout patterns. "We could call it Ref Actor Collective," Mira suggested, playing with terminology that bridged their 2 worlds. Helping organizations refactor not just code but culture. The next morning, a Sunday that would have been indistinguishable from workdays in her previous life, Mira attended a panel at a local tech diversity conference. The invitation had specifically requested her to address wellness accessibility for marginalized communities in tech. "Recovery resources often assume financial and social privileges," she spoke frankly to the packed room. "If our industry truly values diversity, we must ensure mental health support scales across class barriers, recognizes cultural differences in seeking help, and doesn't penalize those who need visible accommodations." During Q&A, a young Black woman engineer raised her hand. "I work at a startup where unlimited mental health days exists on paper, but everyone knows taking more than 2 per year impacts your performance review. How do we bridge policy and practice?" Mira leaned forward. This question struck at the heart of performative wellness versus structural change. Document everything. Start tracking, anonymously if necessary, who actually uses wellness policies and how they're reviewed afterward. Data exposes hypocrisy. Also, find allies willing to normalize these conversations. When senior engineers or managers openly discuss their therapy or medication, it creates permission for others. After the panel, the questioner approached her privately. "I'm 3 weeks into an ADHD medication evaluation," she confided. "Terrified both of needing stimulants and of not being able to function without them." "Your story helps." "Feel fear, not shame," Mira advised. "Fear protects. Shame just silences." These conversations accumulated like interest, small investments in cultural shift that would compound over time. Each person who sought help publicly made it marginally safer for the next. That afternoon, Myra's mother called, the weekly video catch-up that had become precious routine since recovery strengthened their relationship. "Your brother told me about Shanghai," Grace said, face filling the phone screen. "I'm trying not to worry. He's thinking it through carefully. That's what we want, thoughtful risk assessment rather than desperate escape." Her mother's expression softened. "You've both grown so much. Your father would, he'd be proud of how you support each other now." Conversation could have unleashed guilt 3 years ago. More family moments lost to work obsession, more calls cut short for deadlines. Instead, Mira felt grateful for present-day connections that honored rather than avoided the past. "Mom, I've been meaning to ask, do you ever regret that we both ended up in tech? After everything that's happened?" Grace considered this. "I regret the industry's pressures that almost cost us you. I don't regret your brilliance. And I'm grateful you're using that brilliance to make the industry better." After the call, Mira worked briefly on her book manuscript. What had started as a memoir was evolving into a practical guide, sustainable code, programming without self-destruction. She wrote, Chapter 7: International Infrastructure. Recovery crosses borders more easily than we think. Every major city has NA meetings in English. Many countries offer better therapy-integrated healthcare than the United States. The challenge isn't finding support, it's having the confidence to seek it without shame. The recovering tech professional traveling internationally needs medication backup supplies and prescriptions in generic names, digital copies of all medical documents, time zone adjustment strategy that maintains routine, local NA/AA contact information downloaded offline, emergency fund for private healthcare if needed. Her phone chimed, notification from the meditation app she'd been developing with Sam. They'd created it not as another wellness product but as a tool specifically for programmers, with guided sessions timed to coding breaks and mindfulness exercises that appealed to analytical minds. 15-minute debug meditation available, the notification suggested. She accepted, flowing into a practice that would once have seemed ridiculous. Meditation was for retreat centers and yoga studios, not debugging sessions. Now it was as essential as her text editor, a cognitive tool that prevented the tunnel vision that caused critical errors. That evening, she received an email from MIT Press. They wanted to publish an academic version of her workshop series on sustainable development methodologies. The legitimacy of academic publishing brought both pride and imposter syndrome. They want peer review from experts in organizational psychology, she told Sam over dinner. I keep thinking someone will realize I'm qualified by accident rather than design. What's the difference between accidental qualification and lived qualification? Sam asked, cutting directly to the philosophy that often grounded her. One assumes fraud, the other assumes transformation. Which narrative serves you better? Mira considered this. Transformation meant accepting that crisis could forge expertise, that recovery itself was education. Her doctoral invitation from Carnegie Mellon last year had forced similar acceptance. Her life experience counted as valid knowledge. This is another integration point, isn't it? Where my past as liability becomes my present as asset. Exactly. The Academy is finally recognizing that lived experience constitutes knowledge. You were there when they realized mental health mattered as much as computational theory. That night, unable to sleep from thinking about Leo's decision and her expanding platform, Mira found herself in their home office at 2 a.m. Instead of the compulsive coding that would have consumed such sleeplessness before, she opened her journal and wrote a letter to her 25-year-old self. Dear Mira, I'm writing from 3 years in your future. Today you're probably juggling 3 projects, running on Adderall and denial, convinced that everyone else's effortless success means you need to work harder to prove you belong. Next week you'll faint at your desk. It will be the most embarrassing and saving moment of your life. The EMTs will ask about drugs. You'll lie. Dr. Martinez will see something in your eyes that makes her order tests you can't talk your way out of. In the coming months, you'll learn truths that currently terrify you. Your worth isn't measured in commits. Missing dad doesn't require destroying yourself. Medication taken properly helps more than medication abused. The tech industry needs your humanity more than your hyper-productivity. Sam will become your partner once you stop seeing yourself as too broken for happiness. 3 years from now, you'll teach at Stanford. You'll consult internationally. You'll write a book. You'll have a house that feels like home, not a crash pad between assignments. You'll take medication responsibly and vacation without guilt. You'll be happy. Not artificial stimulant-driven manic happiness, but sustainable contentment with creative peaks and necessary valleys. Trust your body's shutdown. It's trying to save you. With love and gratitude. Your future self. P.S. In 2025, the tech industry is still insane, but you're not. That makes all the difference. She saved the letter in her private folder, along with similar writings to past and future selves. Occasionally, when counseling another engineer in crisis, she'd share these as proof that transformation was possible, difficult but possible. The following week, Leo flew to Shanghai for his exploratory visit. His texts came in bursts, photos of glass skyscrapers, night markets, the sprawling tech campuses that rivaled Silicon Valley. But also, connections made at his first NA meeting there, a therapist interview via translator, the relief of finding an international pharmaceutical system that recognized his prescriptions. Found my people, he texted on day 5. It's not like home, but I wouldn't be completely alone. That changes the equation. His return brought decision clarity. He would accept the Shanghai position with negotiated terms. Flexible housing stipend allowing him to live near the recovery community, video therapy reimbursement for maintaining continuity with his current therapist, and guaranteed return flight credits for emergency stateside visits. I learned something important, he told Mira over his farewell dinner. Fear of missing opportunities used to drive every decision. Now it's one factor, balanced against maintaining what we've built. As 2025 moved toward its close, Mira found herself reflecting on 3 years of transformation, not just personal recovery but industry evolution. Tech world hadn't fixed its toxicity overnight, but conversations had shifted. Venture capitalists now asked startup founders about employee wellness strategies. Universities incorporated mental health modules into CS curricula. Major conferences allocated keynote spots to speakers addressing sustainable innovation. In December, she delivered her year-end report to the company she consulted for as Chief Wellness Technology Officer. The metrics impressed even the traditionally skeptical board. 47% reduction in employee stress leaves. 83% of mental health budget utilized, up from 12% previous year. 156% ROI on wellness programs through reduced turnover and increased productivity. 91% of engineers reporting sustainable workload. The data suggests, she concluded her presentation, that wellness isn't just ethically imperative, it's economically sound. Happy engineers write better code. Healthy teams ship more creative solutions. Recovery creates capacity for real innovation. The board approved expanding her consulting role to include helping other tech companies implement similar transformations. Her work was scaling naturally, without the forced growth that had characterized her addiction days. On New Year's Eve, Mira and Sam hosted a small gathering, Leo, back for holidays before Shanghai, her mother and a handful of friends from various aspects of their lives. Recovery community, tech industry, Stanford, their consulting clients. The mixing felt intentional. Integration visible in social form. This time last year, Sam toasted as midnight approached, we were afraid to hope for stability. This year, we're building structure for sustainable success. To year 4. As champagne alternatives clinked glasses, sparkling grape juice for Leo, kombucha for Myra's therapy group friends, Mira felt profound appreciation. Not just for survival but for the intricate systems that supported it. Recovery had taught her to see interdependence as strength, not weakness. At 12:01 a.m., as fireworks illuminated the Oakland Hills, she received a text from a number she didn't recognize. Hi Mira. This is Dr. Martinez, urgent care doc who treated you 3 years ago. My nurse saw you teaching at Stanford graduation ceremony on TV. Wanted you to know that case conference still uses your chart as teaching example. Now about recognizing potential in patients who look like they're falling apart. You changed how we practice. Thank you. The message crystallized something essential. Transformation rippled beyond its origin. Her recovery had influenced medical education, corporate policy, academic curriculum, countless individual lives. The screen door opened. Sam found her on the porch, reading the message again. Heavy thoughts for midnight? Grateful thoughts. 4 second chances and systems that catch us when we fall. She leaned into Sam's warmth. For people who see beyond symptoms to possibilities. Inside, laughter rose from kitchen conversation. Leo was sharing stories about Shanghai's tech scene with her mother and friends. Normal life, sustained by careful architecture built from broken pieces. Year 3 of recovery was ending. Year 4, with its expansion plans for Refactor Collective, book publication, academic collaboration, would bring new challenges and opportunities. But for now, Mira simply breathed California air cleared by rain, watched fireworks reflect off San Francisco Bay, and appreciated the intricate beauty of arriving exactly where she was meant to be, not through perfection but through honest healing. The new year began with possibility held gently, not desperately grasped. 4 years into recovery, Mira stood before a mirror in Carnegie Mellon's faculty building, adjusting her hood for the honorary doctorate ceremony. The reflection held a woman she was still getting to know, confident without arrogance, successful without destruction, content without complacency. Her phone buzzed. "Sam, debug Elvis and I are watching the live stream. You look distinguished." She smiled. They'd adopted a second rescue dog, a 3-legged pit mix named Elvis, who'd bonded immediately with their established routine. Even their pets lived in sustainable balance now. The auditorium filled with graduates, faculty, families, the ecosystem of academic achievement. As the commencement speaker, Mira had prepared extensively but not obsessively. The difference was subtle yet monumental. Dr. Rachel Kim, Dean of Computer Science, introduced her with words that would have intimidated past Mira. A pioneer in sustainable tech practices, transformed corporate culture, teaches recovery as crucial engineering skill. Walking to the podium, Mira noticed her breathing, steady despite the magnitude. No chemical assistance required or desired. "Thank you for this honor. 4 years ago, I couldn't deliver a presentation without pharmaceutical enhancement. Today, I stand here with only caffeine from morning coffee, taken with breakfast, not instead of it." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. She'd learned that vulnerability disarmed more effectively than statistics. Graduates, you are entering an industry still learning that innovation doesn't require self-destruction. You are the generation that can normalize wellness as core engineering practice. She spoke about the future of tech, AI development needing ethical frameworks, startup culture requiring sustainable models, global challenges demanding solutions from whole humans, not burnout victims. "The greatest debugging you'll ever do won't be in code. It will be in culture. Fix the systems that break people, so brilliant minds stay healthy enough to solve tomorrow's problems." During the ceremony's reception, a graduate approached, Elena Torres, whom Mira had met at a tech conference 2 years ago when Elena was contemplating similar struggles. "You probably don't remember me," Elena began. "Of course I do. You were working 70-hour weeks, using Modifinal to compete globally." Elena's eyes widened. "That's exactly right. Your conversation gave me courage to set boundaries. I joined a different startup, one with actual work-life balance. This week, I'm starting as their chief technology officer. These encounters accumulated like deposits in purpose. Each person who found sustainable success reaffirmed the importance of normalizing wellness conversations." That evening, back home in Oakland, Mira opened her private email to find a message from someone using a pseudonym account. "Dear Mira, I followed your work anonymously for the past year. I'm a senior VP at a major tech company. My team thinks I'm visiting family this week. Really, I've finally entered treatment for prescription amphetamine addiction after 15 years of productivity enhancement. Your Stanford lectures introduced me to terms like functional addiction and performance anxiety medication dependence. I thought if I maintained high performance, I wasn't really addicted. Your story showed me that sustainable excellence matters more than unsustainable peak performance. I'm terrified of losing my edge, but I'm more terrified of becoming a cautionary tale. Thank you for showing executive recovery is possible. Anonymous in recovery." Mira crafted a careful response, remembering her early fears about losing capabilities. "Anonymous friend. Your fear of losing your edge is understandable. I shared it. Here's what I discovered. The edge you think you'll lose isn't real sharpness. It's exhaustion masquerading as insight, urgency pretending to be excellence. True competitive advantage comes from sustainable operation. You didn't build your expertise through medication alone. The skills remain. The anxiety about losing them diminishes with recovery. In 2 weeks, caffeine withdrawal will be finished. In 1 month, you'll rediscover what problems look like with clear thinking. In 6 months, you'll wonder how you function through the interference. You've already taken the bravest step, admitting need for change. The industry needs leaders who model health, not heroic dysfunction. Wishing you sustainable success. Mira. She encrypted the response with care. Anonymous executives seeking help required discretion while they built courage for public vulnerability. That summer, the official launch of Refactor Collective marked a significant milestone. Their cooperative of recovered tech professionals had grown to include 12 consultants across 7 countries, all bringing both technical expertise and lived experience with industry pressures. Their first major client engagement, redesigning wellness infrastructure for a unicorn startup valued at $5 billion, validated their approach. Traditional consulting firms had offered meditation apps and yoga studios. Refactor conducted detailed interviews with employees at every level, analyzed actual work patterns rather than stated policies, and recommended systemic changes. Your onboarding process emphasizes speed over sustainability, Mira presented to the startup's leadership. New engineers are encouraged to hit the ground running without systems thinking or sustainable practices. By month 3, they're either burned out or medicating to maintain pace. Her proposed solution, sustainable onboarding, spreading tasks over 12 weeks rather than 4, with built-in mentorship on maintaining boundaries while scaling a high-growth company. The startup CEO, initially skeptical, became their strongest advocate after implementing changes led to 40% reduction in first-year turnover and 23% increase in code quality from new hires. That fall, Life magazine featured Mira in their 100 People Changing America issue. The photograph showed her at her desk, clean, organized medication bottles visible with medical precision. The article's subtitle read, "Former Tech Addict Now Treats Industry's Illness." Sam framed the magazine cover but noted, "It's strange being known for struggling and surviving." Public recovery creates permission for private healing, Mira reflected. If one person reads that article and calls for help instead of mixing another Adderall cocktail, the exposure has worth. Her inbox swelled with messages after publication, from college students, parents of tech workers, HR departments seeking guidance. Each required thoughtful response. Anonymous sharing was matched with personalized support where possible. Most unexpectedly, investment firms began requesting consultations. How do we evaluate portfolio companies for wellness? VCs increasingly asked. How do we fund sustainable growth? Mira developed an assessment framework, the Sustainable Innovation Index, measuring companies on wellness infrastructure, realistic timeline planning, leadership modeling of boundaries, and explicit value placed on human capital maintenance. Mental health investment isn't philanthropy, she explained to one VC firm. It's preventive maintenance on your most expensive infrastructure, human capital. Meanwhile, her brother thrived in Shanghai. Leo's monthly video updates showed authentic appreciation for international recovery community, deeper connection with cultural differences in discussing mental health, and genuine excitement about his AI ethics work. The Chinese tech workers I meet, he shared during a family call, they're asking about sustainable practices. The next generation wants balance before crisis. Your work reaches farther than you know. In November, an invitation arrived that would once have triggered both exhilaration and anxiety, to keynote the World Economic Forum in Davos. Not as tech prodigy but as expert on systemic wellness and innovation ecosystems. Preparing without medication dependence felt like training for an athletic event with natural endurance rather than performance enhancers. She studied global tech policies, compared international approaches to occupational health, connected with economists studying the cost of burnout on national GDPs. On the plane to Switzerland, Mira worked on her presentation with focused calm rather than manic productivity. The speech would connect technological innovation to human sustainability, arguing for new metrics of success. Davos brought face-to-face meetings with leaders across industries. A Japanese automotive executive shared how their company had created mandatory digital detox periods. A Swedish telecom CEO described family leave benefits extended through employee AI training. "We're building self-driving cars," the Japanese executive noted, "but still manually driving ourselves into exhaustion. Your framework applies to any innovation sector." During networking sessions, Mira consciously maintained energy through proper rest rather than stimulants. This meant leaving conversations early, prioritizing sleep over late-night strategy sessions, doing exactly what her presented model suggested. The keynote speech crystallized her 4-year journey. "We measure national progress through GDP growth, corporate success through quarterly earnings, individual achievement through hours logged. These metrics incentivize unsustainable practices. What if we evaluated innovation ecosystems through human capital sustainability? Measured corporate excellence through employee retention rates and wellness utilization? Defined personal success as maintaining creativity across career spans, not peak output during crisis years? Tech transformed how we communicate, work, and think. Now we must transform how we measure, manage, and maintain ourselves." The standing ovation meant less than the conversations following. Policymakers interested in implementing wellness requirements in government contracts, business schools wanting to incorporate sustainable metrics into MBA programs, young professionals asking how to build careers without destroying health. In January 2026, Mira celebrated 5 years of recovery at an NA meeting, not with a grand anniversary celebration but with present-moment gratitude. Maria, her sponsor, had the group form a circle. Mira embodies what we hope recovery becomes, not just personal survival but community transformation. Sharing her story at that basic Tuesday night meeting mattered as much as any international keynote. These were the people who'd seen her through year 1 fears of losing personality, year 2 struggles with persistent anxiety, year 3 questioning if growth required constant evolution. "I still take medication," she shared honestly. "Properly prescribed, carefully monitored. I still attend therapy monthly. Recovery isn't graduation, it's maintenance. Our work is making sure maintenance is normalized, not stigmatized." After the meeting, a newcomer approached, trembling hands, hollow cheeks, expensive suit wrinkled from consecutive all-nighters. "I think I'm where you were," he admitted. "But I can't afford to fail. I have a startup, employees depending on me." Mira recognized the paradox, convinced you can't afford recovery while recovery is the only way to afford continued success. "May I share something?" she asked gently. 5 years ago, I was convinced getting help would cost me everything. Truth was, continuing without help would have cost me everything, including the startup I thought I was saving. She gave him her card for Refactor Collective. "We specialize in founder mental health. Your employees need sustainable leadership more than heroic exhaustion." Walking home through Oakland's cool January night, Mira reflected on the full circle moment. 5 years ago, she'd been the hollow-eyed engineer convinced performance enhancement was mandatory. Now she counseled others through similar transitions. Sam met her at the door with the dogs and hot cocoa, their ritual after her NA meetings. "How was tonight?" "Good. Talked to someone who reminded me of myself at the beginning." Gave him our card. "Another convert to sustainable excellence?" "Hopefully. Although," she smiled, "I'm learning to release outcome attachment. Teaching matters. Whether people immediately change isn't within my control." They settled on the couch, both dogs claiming laps despite supposed weight limits. This domestic peace, 2 professionals maintaining demanding careers while prioritizing simple pleasures, would have seemed impossible in addiction. "Have you noticed," Sam mused, "how many other tech companies are copying our wellness policies now? Remember when we were alone pushing for 4-day work weeks? Innovatech had pioneered the shift 2 years ago. Now, 63 Bay Area tech companies had adopted similar scheduling. Stanford reported increased applications explicitly citing comprehensive mental health support. Culture was changing. It proves systems can evolve. We're not trying to change immutable laws of physics, just outdated business culture. Her manuscript for Debug Your Career was due to the publisher next month. The book had transformed from memoir into hybrid guide, personal story interwoven with practical frameworks for sustainable success, including exercises for recognizing early warning signs, scripts for boundary-setting conversations, and step-by-step guides for finding culturally competent mental health providers. Most importantly, it included sections for allies, how managers could spot concerning patterns, what HR departments should ask about wellness rather than just offering programs, how colleagues could normalize help seeking through their own vulnerability. Late that night, unable to sleep from book anxiety rather than drug withdrawal, Mira opened her laptop. Instead of compulsive editing, she visited the anonymous support forum she moderated for tech professionals. Post read, Day 3 without Adderall. Brain fog terrible. Convinced I'm broken. How long until clear thinking returns? She responded thoughtfully. Day 3 is typically the hardest. Your brain spent months/years receiving external dopamine. Natural production takes time to recalibrate. Give it 2 to 3 weeks for significant improvement, 1 to 2 months for full clarity. What feels like broken thinking is actually healing. You haven't lost intelligence, you're regaining authentic cognitive function. Keep going. The fog lifts. Checking responses while waiting for sleep, she noticed a pattern. More women seeking help with prescription stimulant dependence, older engineers acknowledging decades of medication misuse as industry standard, startup founders realizing leadership required sustainable practices. The conversation normalized. 5 years ago, these admissions happened in individual therapy. Now they occurred in semi-public forums with peer support. February brought an unexpected recognition. The White House invited her to join a technology advisory commission focused on AI ethics and human-centered design. The appointment would influence national policy around tech worker conditions, algorithmic bias consideration, and sustainable innovation incentives. You can't save everyone, Sam reminded her as she grappled with expanding responsibility. But you can influence systems that support everyone. The commission met quarterly in Washington, D.C. Mira found herself among Nobel laureates, industry leaders, and policy experts, still sometimes fighting imposter syndrome, but now with tools to distinguish legitimate self-doubt from destructive anxiety. During one heated debate about mandating AI wellness impact assessments before government adoption, Mira offered perspective. We require environmental impact studies. Why not human cognitive impact studies? We know certain AI implementations increase workplace stress. Documentation prevents uninformed implementation. Her practical approach, neither Luddite nor uncritical technophile, bridged ideological divides in the commission. People who started on opposite sides found common ground through shared concern for human well-being within technological progress. March marked an important personal milestone as Mira successfully tapered off her anxiety medication under psychiatric supervision. The decision, years in consideration, came from recognizing her baseline anxiety had significantly improved through therapy, lifestyle changes, and time. Medication served its purpose, Dr. Martinez, now her primary psychiatrist, affirmed. Recovery created space for natural regulation. We can always return to pharmacological support if needed. The transition went smoothly, testament to years of skill building. When anxiety arose, Mira automatically employed learned techniques rather than reaching for chemical relief. This wasn't heroic abstinence but informed choice based on current needs. She shared the milestone carefully, both as hope and caution. For me at this time, this reduction works. It's not a universal goal. Some brains require lifelong medication. Liberation means taking what's needed, not what's prescribed by achievement culture. Spring brought the book launch tour. Unlike her previous speaking circuit as recovering addict, this positioned her as established expert whose recovery informed rather than defined her credentials. She discussed systemic change as naturally as technical architecture. At a Seattle bookstore, a teenager raised his hand during Q&A. I'm starting CS next year. How do I enter tech without eventually needing what you needed? Myra's response emphasized proactive wellness. Build habits before crisis. Exercise regularly not because something's wrong, but because something's worth maintaining. Seek therapy during calm periods. Establish relationship with support before requiring crisis intervention. Most importantly, define success personally, not through comparison. Question and answer sessions revealed shifting concerns. Early recovery questions focused on, how do I stop? Now they asked, how do I prevent? The industry was learning slowly to value prophylactic measures over crisis response. By mid-year, Refactor Collective had expanded internationally. Their London, Berlin, and Singapore branches offered culturally adapted versions of their sustainable development framework. Local tech cultures required different approaches. Japanese emphasis on collective wellness versus American individual responsibility, European work-hour regulations offering structure missing in Silicon Valley capitalism. Global consulting taught humility. Methods successful in California needed adjustment for Mumbai's different pace and pressure patterns. Their most important export wasn't specific procedures but the philosophical framework. Sustainable excellence serves all stakeholders better than exhaustive brilliance serves a few. In August, Leo returned from Shanghai with news. He'd accepted a permanent position developing AI oversight frameworks for the Chinese government's tech sector. His personal recovery journey had positioned him uniquely to advocate for regulatory approaches balancing innovation with humanity. The work needs doing, he shared during his return visit. Both the algorithmic governance and the human capital preservation. I can help design technology assessment that includes psychological impact. Their parents would have worried years ago, 2 children in tech's highest pressure zones. Now they celebrated 2 children modeling sustainable success while pushing meaningful change. The family dinner conversation flowed naturally between technical specifics and wellness practices. Their mother asked about Shanghai's recovery infrastructure with genuine interest rather than fearful concern. Their father's absence remained present but no longer dominant, remembered through pride rather than regret. September brought reflection as Mira submitted her resignation from teaching. Stanford's invitation had served its purpose, legitimizing work at the academic level, proving concept at educational foundation. Now the work needed expansion beyond single-campus impact. "You're not leaving," the dean clarified when accepting her decision. "You're scaling. Course you designed is now mandatory for CS majors. Your framework is permanent curriculum." During her final lecture, Mira addressed the next generation directly. "This course exists because I nearly destroyed myself and dozens of others did destroy themselves, chasing unsustainable definitions of success. You inherit tech's incredible promise and its toxic patterns. Your job isn't just innovation, it's integration. Build systems that serve human flourishing, not despite humanity but because of it." The standing ovation felt like graduation, hers this time, not the students'. She'd learned to teach what she most needed to learn. October highlighted private success through public failure. A major consulting client, a social media company valued at $50 billion, rejected Refactor Collective's recommendations as too radical for their high-performance culture. Within 6 months, their company faced a $200 million lawsuit from former employees claiming mandatory overtime caused mental health crises requiring hospitalization. The CEO emailed Mira personally, "We should have listened." Rather than responding with vindication, Mira reached out with resources for crisis management. The experience underscored a truth about systemic change. Transformation requires readiness that can't be forced, only cultivated through continued advocacy and example. She shared the incident with her therapist. "Part of me wants to feel validated. Mostly I feel sad that learning required catastrophe. Change often costs pain," Dr. Wright observed. "The question is whether organizations learn proactively or reactively. Your work gives them the choice." As the year wound down, Mira found herself invited to deliver the closing keynote at TechCrunch Disrupt, the same conference where 6 years ago she'd coded through presentations in an Adderall haze, afraid to admit human limitations might slow career advancement. her speech centered on sustainable innovation ecosystems. 6 years ago, I attended this conference desperately trying to appear invincible. Stimulants kept me artificially alert. Anxiety kept me artificially motivated. I measured self-worth in commits and comparisons. Today, I return with different metrics. Teams I consult show 62% higher retention, 40% fewer critical errors, 89% reduction in stress-related absences, and 30% increase in breakthrough innovations, measured after implementing 4-day workweeks and mandatory wellness audits. The future of tech isn't about who can work longest without breaking. It's about who can work smartest while maintaining regenerative capacity. We're building artificial general intelligence while diminishing human intelligence through exhaustion. That's not innovation, it's innovation-adjacent self-destruction. Let 2026 mark the year we fully integrate human flourishing into our definition of technological excellence. The response was overwhelming. Multiple companies announced well-being initiatives during the conference. Venture capital firms pledged to evaluate portfolio investments through sustainability lenses. College students shared personal stories about choosing different career paths after hearing her perspective. The conference's networking reception, now titled Sustainable Success Strategies, Mira encountered an old colleague, James from her original Innovatech team, the one whose midnight commits had once felt like silent judgment of her humanity. "I owe you an apology," James said, approaching carefully. "All those nights when I was coding while you were struggling, I was using performance enhancers too, keeping it secret, making you feel inferior. I got help after watching your recovery journey. Thank you for the honesty that gave me permission to seek it too." The admission struck deeply. How many silent sufferers had her openness helped while she was focused only on visible impact metrics? We were all pretending, Mira reflected. Pretending to be machines instead of supporting each other as humans. That conversation sparked an idea. What if tech companies implemented truth forums, quarterly anonymous sessions where employees could admit to using substances for performance enhancement, struggling with imposter syndrome, or facing mental health challenges normally hidden from colleagues? Data collection without individual identification. Culture change through aggregate awareness. She pitched the concept to several clients. Within months, preliminary results showed 73% of participating employees had been hiding some form of wellness struggle. Once anonymously shared, these struggles became less isolating, more addressable through systemic support. The year's final milestone came on December 19th, the anniversary of her last Adderall misuse. Unlike previous years marked with relief at distance from crisis, year 5 felt like integration completed. She didn't fear returning to old patterns because she'd rebuilt identity foundations incompatible with them. Instead of anniversary reflection, she spent the day consulting with a new client, a robotics company where engineers joked darkly about running on fumes and fear. The humor concealed serious concerns. 2 senior developers had recently taken medical leave for stress-induced autoimmune conditions. "Your robots are designed for maintenance cycles," Mira observed during the initial assessment. "Your humans need equivalent care architecture. Programming languages evolve through refactoring. The workplace culture deserves the same continuous improvement." Walking their development floor, she noticed familiar patterns: energy drink mountains beside workstations, blue light filtering apps, standing desks raised to maximum height during evening hours. Signs of people managing rather than preventing fatigue. After comprehensive interviews and data analysis, she proposed regenerative robotics, a 6-month transformation plan incorporating biological rhythms into engineering sprints, mandatory maintenance windows for both machine and human systems, and success metrics balancing prototype advancement against team well-being. Company's CEO initially balked at cost projections. "We're already behind schedule." Behind sustainable operation, Mira countered, is ahead of catastrophic breakdown. Your competitors are burning out their talent quarterly. You could build consistent advantage through regenerative investment. They agreed to a 3-month pilot. Results exceeded expectations. Productivity increased 17% when engineers worked sustainably, bug resolution improved 42% with adequate rest periods, and most critically, the previously stagnant killer robot arm project achieved breakthrough innovation during enforced walking meetings. Our best solution came while throwing frisbee, one engineer shared. Turns out physical movement activates different neural pathways than screen staring. On New Year's Eve, Mira and Sam hosted their annual gathering, now traditional since year one of recovery. This time Leo joined virtually from Shanghai, their mother attended in person, and colleagues from various continents connected through screens positioned among guests. 5 years of sustainable success, Sam toasted at midnight. To year 6, however it unfolds. As fireworks illuminated the Oakland sky, Myra's phone displayed an influx of messages, not crisis calls requiring immediate response but appreciative notes from people touched by her advocacy. Your book helped me quit Modafinil after 8 years. Started Stanford's well-being program because you proved it's essential. Leaving a toxic startup thanks to your framework on evaluating culture. My daughter codes now, she says her professor teaches recovery engineering. She read each message with gratitude rather than addiction to external validation. The work continued, not driven by void-filling need but by clear purpose aligned with values. An hour into 2026, after guests had departed and they were washing dishes together, Sam observed, "Remember when you couldn't imagine being happy without Adderall? Or successful without constant crisis?" Mira smiled, watching suds swirl down the drain, a simple pleasure that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. Now I can't imagine squandering life pursuing unsustainable excellence. The irony is, sustainable living enables better work, not worse. Later, journaling before natural sleep, she wrote her final entry of year 5. Recovery taught me that peak performance isn't about pushing systems beyond design limits. It's about operating within optimal ranges consistently. This applies to humans, machines, and organizations. Year 1, learn to survive without medication. Year 2, learn to thrive without isolation. Year 3, learn to teach without imposing. Year 4, learn to scale without sacrificing foundation. Year 5, learn to lead transformation while maintaining personal equilibrium. Year 6 will bring new lessons. The beauty of recovery. It trades manic invincibility for sustainable curiosity. I'm no longer afraid to discover what I don't know. To anyone still trapped in performance addiction, help exists. Healing is possible. You are not equipment to be optimized but a human deserving maintenance. The industry needs your whole self, not your half-life. Integration complete. Adventure continues. She closed the journal, placed it on the bedside table, and turned off the light. Sighed, the San Francisco Bay reflected lingering fireworks while Debug and Elvis snored in stereo. Tomorrow would bring another day of writing new cultural code, one human-considerate function at a time. The future remained unwritten, but for the first time in her adult life, Mira anticipated it with presence rather than panic, authenticity rather than artificial enhancement, and most importantly, the understanding that her greatest legacy wouldn't be any single innovation but the sustainable way she chose to live and work. Recovery had debugged her life. Now she was helping debug an industry. The system was updating. The future was loading. Everything finally was going to compile just fine. Year 6 began with an unexpected integration challenge. In January 2026, Mira received a call from Dr. Margaret Chen, Stanford Medical's chief of psychiatry and, coincidentally, a distant cousin she'd met only once at a family reunion. "I'm conducting breakthrough research on prescription stimulant dependency in high-performing populations," Dr. Chen explained. "Your trajectory from addiction to activism makes you uniquely qualified to co-author. We're seeking grant funding to study neurological changes in tech workers recovering from performance enhancement regimens." The invitation triggered complex emotions. Participating in medical research about her own condition felt both validating and exposing. But the potential impact, understanding brain chemistry changes during tech worker recovery, outweighed personal discomfort. "I need to discuss with my sponsor and therapist first," Mira responded, maintaining boundaries even when facing exciting opportunities. Some research might compromise my anonymity, which protects both my personal recovery and professional objectivity. After deliberation, she agreed to contribute anonymized data and consult on methodology rather than serve as a test subject. The distinction felt important. She could inform research without becoming its specimen. Project revealed fascinating preliminary findings. Programmers who'd misused Adderall for 2+ years showed distinct neural pathway modifications compared to those taking it as prescribed. Most remarkably, sustained recovery produced measurable neuroplasticity, brains literally rewiring themselves back to pre-addiction architecture. "Your brain truly heals," Dr. Chen shared after reviewing Myra's 6-year sobriety scans. "The damage isn't permanent. Given proper time and support, executive function returns to optimal baseline." This neurological evidence became powerful ammunition against stigma. Mira incorporated it into her consulting practice. Recovery isn't weakness overcoming strength. Strength rebuilding from intentional damage. Your brain demonstrates remarkable resilience when given the resources to heal. Meanwhile, her book Debug Your Career achieved unexpected success. It spent 3 weeks on the New York Times Business bestseller list, prompted international translation requests, and most surprisingly, sparked a movement of sustainable Saturday meetups, tech workers worldwide gathering weekly to practice the book's exercises and discuss implementation challenges. The meetups required no official organization from Mira. Readers spontaneously created local groups, facilitated by shared experiences rather than formal leadership. This organic growth felt more authentic than any marketing campaign could have achieved. "It's like open-source recovery," Sam observed, watching a live stream from Mumbai where engineers practiced mindful debugging exercises. "You wrote the documentation, the community is developing the implementation." In March, a crisis tested everything she'd built. Her primary consulting client, the robotics company that had embraced regenerative practices, faced a critical deadline for a military contract. Temptation to temporarily abandon wellness protocols for sprint execution pressure arrived forcefully. "We understand your framework," their CEO explained during an emergency meeting. "But losing this contract could mean layoffs. Can we implement temporary override of rest requirements?" Mira recognized the dilemma intimately. Crisis often justified abandoning principles in the moment while promising to restore them later, a later that rarely materialized. "I have an alternative proposal," she countered. "Instead of emergency override, implement emergency enhancement. Double the wellness budget temporarily. Provide on-demand massage therapy, 24-hour counseling, premium meal delivery. Support system stress rather than ignoring it." The investment proved transformative. Instead of pushing engineers beyond capacity, the company amplified support structures. Deadlines were met with less burnout, higher quality output, and crucially, preserved trust that leadership prioritized human capital even under pressure. "We kept the contract and our people," the CEO reported 3 months later. "Traditional crisis management would have cost us both. Your approach redefined possible." This success prompted inquiries from defense contractors and emergency services, sectors where crisis work was perpetual, not occasional. Could sustainable practices apply when lives depended on immediate response? Mira developed frameworks specific to high-stakes environments, maximum sustainable alert protocols that rotated demanding responsibilities, built redundancy into critical systems, and maintained baseline wellness even during prolonged stress. "No system operates optimally under continuous maximum stress," she presented to a gathering of emergency tech vendors. "Humans aren't exceptions. We can design for sustainable intensity rather than accepting inevitable burnout." Her consulting practice evolved into a hybrid model combining traditional business advisory with wellness infrastructure design. Companies hired Refactor Collective not just to implement policies but to redesign incentive structures, creating architecture where wellness drove success rather than competed with it. One innovative client, a social impact startup focused on financial technology for underserved communities, requested help building trauma-informed development practices. Many of their engineers came from the same marginalized communities they served, carrying personal experiences of economic insecurity that fueled both passion and anxiety. "We're building financial solutions to reduce stress," the CTO shared, "while our developers experience financial stress building them. The irony isn't lost on us." Mira worked with their team to address systemic factors: equitable compensation reducing present financial anxiety, mental health support acknowledging both personal and community trauma, and development practices that channeled lived experience into empathetic design without exploiting personal pain. The resulting equity engineering methodology gained attention beyond tech. Nonprofit organizations and government agencies began adopting similar frameworks, recognizing that workforce wellness directly correlated with mission achievement. Meanwhile, her brother Leo initiated an ambitious project in Shanghai, creating the first international cross-border recovery network for tech workers. The system connected employees relocated to different countries with peer support from others who'd made similar transitions. "Relocation stress combines with existing pressures," Leo explained during their video update. "When your support system is 14 time zones away, maintaining recovery requires intentional connection building." The network's success prompted global tech companies to request similar infrastructure for their expatriate workforces. What began as Leo's personal survival mechanism evolved into corporate best practice for managing international talent. Summer brought an unexpected honor: invitation to keynote the inaugural Global Wellness and Technology Summit in Geneva. The UN-sponsored event aimed to establish international standards for tech worker well-being across cultural and economic contexts. Her speech title was ambitious: Debugging Humanity, Recovery as Universal Human Right. "We accept different programming languages, operating systems, and network protocols as necessary diversity," she began. "But we question whether providing basic mental health support might somehow disadvantage technological development. This contradiction costs human potential globally." She called for establishing baseline wellness standards across borders, mandatory recovery resources in work visas, international agreements on maximum hours for remote workers serving multiple time zones, and recognition that unsustainable development practices created technical debt in human systems. The response exceeded expectations. Multiple nations committed to developing national tech worker protection frameworks. The European Union announced plans to extend existing work-hour regulations specifically to address round-the-clock tech operations. Perhaps most significantly, the World Health Organization invited her to help draft Digital Health Guidelines 2030 addressing occupational hazards unique to knowledge work economies. During the conference's final panel, a roundtable including ministers from 6 countries, Mira emphasized practical implementation over theoretical agreement. "Standards without enforcement become suggestions. We need monitoring systems for compliance, support structures for businesses transitioning practices, and most critically, protection for individuals reporting violations without fear of career retaliation." Flying home from Geneva, she reflected on recovery's expanding scope. What began as personal salvation had evolved into international policy consideration. Yet the most meaningful work remained intimate: one person, one team, one company at a time. Returning to Oakland, she immediately checked in with local support networks before international concerns. Her NA home group still met in the same church basement where she'd first admitted prescription addiction 6 years prior. "How was the UN?" asked Thomas, a group regular who'd supported her since early recovery. "Complicated. Important. But this," she gestured to their circle, "remains foundational. Without personal recovery, professional influence means nothing." The group dynamics had evolved too. Former addicts now mentored current participants. Recovery veterans helped newcomers navigate early sobriety challenges. The ecosystem sustained itself through mutual support rather than expert intervention. That autumn, Mira faced a personal milestone requiring new navigation skills. Sam's work with Refactor Collective expanded significantly, bringing consulting opportunities that required international travel. Their complementary partnership risked geographic strain. We've built careers on sustainable practices, Sam pointed out during one of their evening shore walks. Now we need to prove long-distance co-parenting of our relationship works with the same principles. They implemented relationship architecture, intentional scheduling of quality time, divided responsibilities to prevent resentment during absences, and regular emotional check-ins using communication frameworks they developed for client teams. It's weird, Mira admitted during one of Sam's trips to Berlin, applying project management to romance. But it works. We're treating our relationship with the same care we insist companies show their employees. The approach proved resilient through challenges that would have destabilized their pre-recovery selves. Conflicts arose around competing travel schedules, divergent growth directions, and the simple logistics of maintaining intimacy across time zones. Yet they navigated difficulties with tools earned through years of personal work. Clear boundary setting, assumption checking, vulnerability without victimhood, and most importantly, commitment to each other's individual growth rather than forcing static definitions of partnership. In November, an email from an unexpected source disrupted routine. Michael Zhang, the engineer whose burnout had first prompted Myra's attention to others' struggles, now CEO of a unicorn startup valued at $8 billion. Mira, 6 years since you called me out for unhealthy work habits. Since then, founded Mindful Tech, implemented every policy you recommended, became poster child for sustainable startups. Now facing unexpected challenge. Our board wants me gone. Not for performance, we've exceeded every metric. 'Cause I maintain boundaries. Leave at 6 p.m. Take real vacations. Won't sacrifice wellness for optics. They say I've lost the hunger that made us successful. That sustainable leadership isn't startup leadership. I think they're wrong. Your framework proves they're wrong. Would you consider joining our board? Your presence might shift the conversation from whether wellness works to how it becomes standard. The invitation sparked intense consideration. Board positions offered significant influence over industry evolution but also required political navigation that could compromise principled stances. After consultation with mentors including Maria, her NA sponsor who now worked as organizational psychologist, Mira accepted with conditions. She would serve only if empowered to establish board-level wellness metrics and implement anonymous feedback systems for employee culture assessment. Her first board meeting proved immediately contentious. Traditional venture capitalists questioned whether sustainable practices could scale beyond mid-size companies. They cited Amazon, Meta, and other tech giants built during periods of intense work culture. Those companies succeeded despite unsustainable practices, not because of them, Mira countered. They survive through market dominance, not operational efficiency. Sustainable competitors may move slower initially but maintain velocity longer. Michael had prepared meticulously. He presented longitudinal data comparing Mindful Tech's metrics against traditionally managed competitors. 300% lower turnover in senior technical roles. 47% fewer production incidents requiring emergency response. 89% of employees rating culture as sustainable. Stock value growth outperforming industry average by 12%. The numbers gradually convinced. By meeting's end, the board approved expanding Mindful Tech's wellness initiatives while adding Mira as special advisor on scaling sustainable practices. Her appointment to a unicorn board attracted media attention. Tech journalists positioned it as vindication. Former addict now guards against startup's most dangerous drug, work itself. But Mira insisted on more complex framing. This isn't recovered versus active addiction. It's everyone learning together how to build companies without consuming people. Recovery gave me perspective, not superior morality. December brought full-circle moments requiring careful processing. Stanford invited her to deliver the commencement address for their computer science graduates, 6 years after her own silent struggle through those same ceremonies. Walking across Stanford's familiar quadrangles, she remembered the hidden pain she'd carried as student. Adderall taken in library bathrooms, Xanax for exam anxiety, the constant fear that success required sacrificing self. Now she returned to prevent similar suffering among new graduates. Her address drew parallels between code compilation and human development. You've spent years debugging algorithms, optimizing performance, and fixing edge cases. Apply the same rigor to your own system design. Build in error handling for stress. Design redundancy into your work patterns. Remember that the most elegant solution isn't always the fastest. It's the one that maintains integrity under pressure. She shared her own campus memories, the spots where she'd hidden pills, the places where anxiety attacks had overtaken her, the buildings where brilliant peers had confessed similar struggles during rushed study sessions. This institution taught you technical excellence. Let me offer one more lesson: excellence without exhaustion. Innovation without destruction. Success that compounds rather than consuming. The graduates responded with understanding that transcended generational division. They faced the same pressures she'd felt, amplified by advancing AI competition, global talent pools, and economic uncertainty. Her survival offered not just hope but methodology. After graduation, walking through campus with Sam, she paused at the medical center where she'd once sought anxiety medication. Through the windows, she observed current students, some appearing stressed, others maintaining balance, all navigating the eternal challenge of preserving humanity while pursuing technical mastery. "Think your speech will change anything?" Sam asked. "Speeches plant seeds. Culture changes when enough people tend similar gardens." They continued home to Oakland, where their own garden literally required care. The physical act of growing vegetables had become meditative practice, another way of connecting to Earth's patience when tech speed felt overwhelming. That evening, checking email before shutdown time, Mira discovered a message from someone using only initials. "MC, I was in your Stanford audience today. Been taking unprescribed stimulants since junior year. Thought I needed them to compete. Your story showed me I'm competing against the wrong metric. Starting recovery tomorrow. Thank you for making it possible to admit need without feeling failure." She saved the message alongside others in her Why This Matters folder. 6 years of public vulnerability had generated hundreds of similar confessions. Each represented not just individual healing but cultural adjustment, another person choosing sustainable excellence over destructive performance. As Year 6 concluded, Mira stood at the edge of significant expansion. Her consulting practice had grown internationally. Her research offered neurological evidence supporting recovery benefits. Her influence extended from corporate boardrooms to university curricula to international policy discussions. Yet core purpose remained unchanged, helping others avoid the precipice she'd nearly toppled from, building systems that supported rather than exploited human potential. On December 31st, reviewing the year's accomplishments before their New Year's party, she wrote in her journal, "Year 6 proved recovery operates multiple ways. Personal healing enables community service, which influences systematic change, which facilitates more personal healing. The cycle becomes regenerative rather than draining. Professional milestones this year: UN engagement, board appointment, research collaboration, policy influence. Personal victories: maintained relationship through geographic tests, helped brother establish international support, prevented multiple crisis interventions through early awareness campaigns. Key lesson: integration requires constant calibration. Systems evolve, approaches must adapt. But core values, sustainability, compassion, holistic success, provide steady guidance through complexity. Beginning Year 7 tomorrow. Same foundation, expanding architecture." At midnight, surrounded by chosen family, she raised her sparkling water to toast the new year. Outside their windows, fireworks illuminated Oakland's hills, while inside, conversations mixed recovery wisdom with technical innovation, cultural analysis with personal storytelling. This balance, maintaining both individual stability and collective progress, defined sustainable success. Not the manic achievement she'd once pursued, but integrated excellence that served both self and others. Recovery had taught her to debug not just code but culture. Now she worked to ensure the next generation inherited functional systems rather than beautiful crises. The new year arrived with quiet promise. Systems running stable. Architecture sound. Date in progress. February 2027 marked exactly 7 years since Myra's fainting episode at Innovatech, the crash that forced a complete system rewrite. To commemorate, she accepted an invitation to return to that same office for a company-wide presentation titled 7 Years of Sustainable Success. Walking through Innovatech's doors felt strange. The office had transformed, standing desks interspersed with meditation corners, collaborative spaces designed for both focused work and restful breaks, and prominently displayed digital detox hours, 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. Jordan, now CTO, greeted her like family. "You started a revolution here." After your recovery, 3 other engineers sought help for prescription dependency. Now we have embedded wellness advisors. Sam had joined her for this significant visit. As they toured updated facilities, Mira noticed former colleagues, those who'd witnessed her breakdown, approaching with genuine warmth rather than residual discomfort. "I never thanked you properly," said Catherine from accounting. "Watching you get help gave me courage to address my anxiety. I've been in therapy 3 years now." Presentation hall overflowed. New Innovatech engineers sat beside veterans who'd known her during active addiction. She began with vulnerability. "7 years ago, I collapsed in your open office. I was drowning in prescribed performance enhancers, crushing perfectionism, and unprocessed grief. That collapse saved my life." She outlined transformation phases. Years 1 to 2, Personal Recovery Foundation. Establishing medication compliance. Building support networks. Learning to function authentically. Developing sustainable work practices. Years 3 to 4, Professional integration. Consulting while maintaining boundaries. Teaching recovery principles. Publishing experiences. Scaling personal solutions into frameworks. Years 5 to 6, Cultural architecture. Influencing corporate policy. Shaping international standards. Bridging medical and tech communities. Advocating legislative protections. Year 7, Systems synthesis. Recovery as leadership skill. Wellness as innovation catalyst. Human flourishing as competitive advantage. Sustainable excellence as career longevity. Today's tech metrics still heavily favor output over well-being, she continued. But we're seeing cracks in that foundation. Companies with robust wellness infrastructure outperform traditional work-harder cultures in employee retention, innovation rate, and crisis management resilience. During Q&A, a junior developer asked, "How do we convince managers that taking mental health days strengthens rather than weakens our value?" "Document your output patterns," Mira advised. "Track productivity before and after rest periods. Build data showing that sustainable workers deliver more consistent value than burnt-out heroes. Managers respond to evidence." After the presentation, current team leads approached with implementation questions. Her former desk area now featured a wellness station with aromatherapy, gravitational massage devices, and a meditation in progress signal. "We kept your old nameplate," Jordan revealed, pointing to preserved hardware mounted on the wall. Mira Chen's senior engineer, recovered perfectionist. The gesture touched deeply. She'd spent years fearing that recovery would erase professional identity. Instead, it had expanded recognition from technical contributor to cultural transformer. That evening, at dinner with Sam and select Innovatech alumni, conversations flowed between personal updates and industry evolution. These were people who'd witnessed her transition from high-performing addict to sustainable leader, whose own trajectories had shifted observing her transformation. 7 years, reflected Alex, their former UI specialist. "Remember when we thought anyone seeking therapy was weak? Now half our team has therapists. It's like we collectively grew up." Later, walking Oakland streets with Sam, Mira processed the homecoming's significance. Returning to addiction's ground zero while embodying recovery's embodiment felt like completing narrative arc. "I used to dread anniversary dates," she admitted. Each milestone marked distance from crisis with fear of inevitable return. And now they mark accumulated strength. 7 years isn't just time elapsed, it's infrastructure built, systems developed, community cultivated. In March, an unexpected opportunity arose combining her scientific curiosity with advocacy platform. The National Institute of Mental Health selected her proposal for studying neurological markers in tech professional recovery through long-term brain imaging of engineers transitioning from stimulant dependency to sustainable function. The research required her to undergo quarterly MRIs alongside 50 volunteer subjects. Watching her own brain scans evolve fascinated and humbled. Neural pathways literally rewiring toward natural function, fear centers stabilizing, creative regions expanding with meditation practice. Dr. Chen, lead researcher, pointed out significant findings. Your brain demonstrates remarkable neuroplasticity. Areas associated with stress response actually contracted while regions supporting executive function and emotional regulation enlarged. Recovery isn't just chemical, it's architectural. Publishing preliminary results challenged stigma surrounding recovery duration. Myra's brain data proved healing continued well beyond active addiction cessation. Even after 7 years, positive changes appeared in neural structure. This debunks the myth that you either get over addiction quickly or never really recover, Myra shared during an NIH press briefing. Recovery is sustained healing, not instant cure. Extended abstinence paired with therapy creates measurable brain improvements. Meanwhile, Refactor Collective expanded beyond consulting into product development. Sam led creation of Sustainable Sprint, a project management tool built specifically for tech teams prioritizing wellness. Unlike traditional productivity apps pushing maximum efficiency, Sustainable Sprint integrated mandatory break reminders calibrated to task intensity, workload distribution algorithms preventing individual overload, meeting optimization to reduce collaboration fatigue, team wellness dashboards tracking sustainable velocity. Product gained traction particularly among startups implementing progressive cultures. Beta testing showed 43% reduction in developer burnout compared to baseline metrics. We're not just teaching culture change, Sam explained during their series of funding presentation. We're building infrastructure that makes wellness the path of least resistance. Silicon Valley investors showed mixed reactions. Some celebrated innovation in workplace well-being. Others questioned market viability of anti-productivity tools. Myra reminded their team, not everyone will adopt sustainable practices immediately. Our job is making them available for when consciousness catches up with necessity. April brought devastating news testing everything she'd built. Maria, her NA sponsor since early recovery, suffered a heart attack. The woman who'd guided countless others through addiction's darkness now faced mortality herself. Hospital vigil forced Myra to confront her own fear of loss, both personal and symbolic. Maria represented proof that recovery could sustain. If even sponsors faltered, "You're projecting addiction logic onto recovery dynamics," her therapist, now monthly maintenance rather than weekly necessity, observed. Recovery doesn't promise immortality. It promises authentic living for whatever time we have. The ICU, Myra held Maria's hand, thinking about reversed roles from years prior when Maria had supported her through withdrawal. This was recovery's complete cycle, giving back strength once received. "Promise me something," Maria whispered during a lucid moment. "Anything. Keep going. Keep teaching. Don't let anyone romanticize addiction as artistic necessity or brilliant suffering. Clarity creates, not chaos." Maria survived the crisis but chose to step back from active sponsorship. The transition required Myra to absorb leadership roles she'd never anticipated, becoming senior presence in local recovery community. Mentoring newer addicts revealed how thoroughly she'd integrated lessons once foreign. What felt impossibly difficult at year 1 became intuitive by year 7. Reading denial patterns, identifying sustainable motivation versus desperate attempts, matching appropriate support to individual personalities. Her expanded role included facilitating recovery tech meetings specifically for engineers navigating Silicon Valley pressures. These sessions combine traditional 12-step wisdom with tech-specific challenges, managing on-call rotations while sober, handling review stress without medication enhancement, building career advancement without self-destructive proving. Summer brought international recognition through an unexpected channel, the Japanese Ministry of Health invitation to keynote their Digital Workforce Wellness Initiative. Japan's tech industry faced unique challenges, cultural stigma against mental health discussion combined with extreme work intensity. Her presentation required careful cultural navigation. Direct American-style vulnerability could alienate rather than inspire. Instead, she focused on data. In studying 10,000 tech workers across 5 countries, we found biological responses to stress remain constant despite cultural differences. Heart rate variability, cortisol patterns, neurodiversity expression, these transcend borders. Japanese engineers responded particularly well to systematic approaches, specific protocols for rest, documented benefits of meditation, measurable outcomes from boundary enforcement. What seemed soft and abstract became compelling through empirical evidence. During individual consultations, several Japanese developers privately disclosed struggles. "In my culture, admitting medication dependence brings family shame," one senior architect confided. "But my algorithm design becomes erratic without stimulants. Your recovery proves genius doesn't require chemical enhancement." These conversations sparked initiative to create culturally adapted NA materials emphasizing anonymity while respecting collectivist values. Recovery required localization just like any global product. Her Japanese week concluded with meditation at ancient Zen temples, learning practices predating electronic overwhelm but perfectly suited for managing it. The aesthetic of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection, resonated deeply with her recovery philosophy. "We chase digital perfection," she reflected with temple monks who'd integrated technology mindfully, while ancient wisdom understands that dynamic systems require imperfect elements for resilience. Returning home, she incorporated Japanese concepts into her framework. Kaizen, continuous improvement, and Ma, negative space, offered complementary perspectives to relentless Western optimization culture. Autumn marked another unexpected evolution: parenting. She and Sam had discussed family building abstractly, but when their friend's situation thrust teenage foster care need into immediate reality, theoretical became practical. Kayla arrived, 14 years old, brilliant at coding, self-medicating ADHD with stolen stimulants to manage demanding charter school expectations. History echoed painfully. "I'm not trying to replace anyone in your life," Mira told Kayla during initial adjustment weeks. "But I've been where you are." Believing performance enhancement was survival necessity. Kayla's presence transformed their home dynamics. Recovery principles that guided romantic partnership now extended to parenting. Consistent routines providing security, honest communication about mental health, modeling boundary recognition. Watching Kayla code with intense concentration triggered Myra's memories of young self, brilliant but brittle, talented but terrified of exposure. She saw the pills Kayla tried hiding, recognized the jittery energy poorly managed, understood intimately the pressure driving secret consumption. Rather than confrontation, Mira introduced gentle alternatives. "Want to try pair programming? Sometimes collaboration reduces pressure better than medication." Structured hackathons with rest breaks. Gaming sessions that satisfied dopamine needs without substances. Most powerfully, she let Kayla witness her own routine. Morning medication taken openly, therapy appointments kept without shame, work boundaries maintained despite deadlines. "You really just stop at 6?" Kayla asked one evening, surprised to find Mira reading fiction instead of coding. "Work expands to consume available consciousness. I contain it intentionally." "But what if you miss something important?" "I guarantee I'll miss something important. The question is whether I miss it while maintaining sanity or lose both work quality and health chasing imaginary completeness." Kayla's gradual acceptance of sustainable practices felt like watching herself heal backwards through time. Developmental cycles completing circles, wounded teenager becoming protective mentor, past trauma transforming into present wisdom. By November, significant system updates converged. The NIH research entered advanced phase requiring deeper brain mapping. Mindful Tech announced filing for IPO while maintaining sustainability mandates. The World Health Organization adopted her frameworks for global digital worker protection standards. Most significantly, Kayla voluntarily disclosed ADHD diagnosis and requested support establishing medication management under proper psychiatric supervision, trusting enough to ask for help rather than self-medicate in secret. "I don't want to rely on them," Kayla confessed during family therapy session Mira had initiated. "But I don't want to be like you were, using wrong things wrong ways." "Using them properly prevents using them desperately," Mira assured. "The difference between medication and addiction is respect for the substance, yourself, and medical guidance." Their therapist noted the power of lived modeling over lecture. Kayla learns recovery by watching its daily implementation, not theoretical discussion. December arrived with both expected and surprising developments. The NIH study revealed that individuals maintaining 7-year recovery showed remarkable neurological healing, but also that certain vulnerabilities remained permanent. Understanding this balance became a crucial educational tool. "Recovery doesn't erase addiction susceptibility," she shared when publishing findings. "It builds management systems stronger than original vulnerabilities." Like any immunological condition, our brains remember both problem and solution. Christmas brought extended family together, her mother now openly discussing mental health support groups she'd joined, Leo visiting from Shanghai with stories about implementing Chinese-specific wellness protocols and tech governance, and most preciously, watching Kayla experience her first sober holidays in supportive environment. "Last year," Kayla shared during dinner, "I spent Christmas break catching up on assignments while everyone celebrated. Thought that made me dedicated. Really made me isolated." Her mother's response combined grandmother's affection with recovered parents' wisdom. Dedication without sustainability becomes self-destruction. "We know this now." New Year's Eve 2027 brought their traditional gathering. This year, watching fireworks from their deck included Kayla, now part of their chosen family, living proof that recovery cycles could propagate forward rather than merely heal backward. As midnight approached, Mira proposed modifications to their customary toast. To year 8. To continued integration. To the understanding that recovery isn't just personal salvation, it's generational investment. What we heal in ourselves prevents wounds in others. The toast resonated through their gathering. Colleagues who'd implemented sustainable practices, fellow recovering professionals who'd found stability, and newer members introduced through expanding community networks. 12:01 a.m., her phone displayed expected influx of messages. But this year brought unique addition, text from Dr. Martinez, who diagnosed her cardiac issues 7 years prior. "Happy New Year, Mira." Published retrospective study today examining patient outcomes who received early intervention for stimulant-related cardiac stress. "Your case became our model for aggressive treatment protocols. 7 patients this year received similar care because your story informed our practice. Saving lives by sharing your journey." Reading this aloud brought tears. Understanding ripples of wellness promotion extend beyond direct influence into medical education and preventive care protocols. As celebration wound down and guests departed, leaving core family Sam, Kayla, and herself, she reflected on recovery's complete architecture. Started as desperate survival mechanism, evolved through professional transformation, expanded into cultural influence, now encompass direct nurturing of next generation. Journaling before sleep, she wrote Year 7's conclusion. Recovery Year 7 Summary. Professional. Published neurological research validating long-term healing. Expanded Ref Actor Collective to 20 consultants across 4 continents. Influenced international wellness standards through WHO collaboration. Personal. Integrated fostering Kayla while maintaining own recovery routines. Deepened partnership with Sam through shared parenting challenges. Accepted sponsor emeritus role as Maria stepped back. Community. Facilitated specialized NA meetings for tech professionals. Created culturally sensitive recovery resources for global distribution. Witnessed former colleagues establish wellness initiatives independently. Systemic. Saw multiple corporations adopt sustainable sprint methodologies organically. Observed university curriculum changes reflecting recovery-informed computer science education. Documented measurable brain improvements reinforcing recovery legitimacy. Lessons this year. When healing transfers across generations through modeling rather than instruction. 2. Recovery architecture strengthens through applying principles to new challenges rather than maintaining static practices. 3. True success measures sustained positive change across interconnected systems, personal, professional, and communal. 4. Vulnerability remains strength. Sharing struggles creates permission for others' healing. Year 8 begins tomorrow. Same foundation, expanded applications. Integration continues. She closed the journal and prepared for natural sleep. No Ambien needed, brain weariness replaced by earned tiredness from meaningful day. Outside, Oakland settled into quiet night. Inside, their small family rested in hard-won peace. 7 years ago, she'd been dying inside a successful exterior. Tonight, she lived fully across all dimensions. Healed helper, recovering mentor, sustainable engineer, chosen parent. Recovery's complete system update, version 7.0. New features included patience with imperfection, wisdom gained through vulnerability, strength refined by learning to yield. Program continued running. All systems nominal. Future updates anticipated with curiosity rather than anxiety. Human flourishing within technical excellence, successfully integrated. Operations sustainable.